NFL football today, certainly some college football today as well. A little Major League Baseball that we'll get into. College basketball, a couple teams in action tonight with KU and K-State. Mizzou in action on Friday. A couple of weeks left in the college football season. Adam Teicher will be our guest coming up at 11 o'clock from ESPN, our Chiefs insider from ESPN. We'll talk with Braden Gall coming up at noon. Some college football conversation with Braden Gall and the convoluted Big 12 standings, the convoluted and crazy SEC standings. Maybe some of this could be alleviated with, what's that thing called? They used to have them in the past when you'd have like a conference and you'd have like a 12 to 14 teams and they would split them into, what are those things called? Divisions, I guess? Something like that? Yeah, weird. Divisions. How those
BCS. You're thinking of the.
That's what I'm talking about. Bowl
computers.
games. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah. Is who's going to the Rose Bowl to figure out who's going to be the national champion, and can we get a split national title this year? Let's hope. Fingers crossed. Divisions would certainly help. I don't know. I'm just spitballing here and just thinking crazy right now because there are some tie-breaking scenarios that will come into play most likely in these two conferences, because there's a decent chance that the SEC is going to have 5 teams tied for second place. 5 teams tied to get to play the winner or get to play the team that is already in there, which is probably going to be Texas or Texas A&M. The winner of that game, the end of the season, because Texas has Kentucky this weekend, A&M has Auburn, and they both should win that game. And then they face off against each other, both with one loss in conference. Winner of that one will go to the SEC championship game. The loser of that one will most likely, because of all the other opponents the teams are facing, will fall to a 5-way tie at 6-2 for the
run it
second
back, baby.
team.
Just run it back.
5-way tie at 6-2. And if you do some of the math, there's a lot of projection that goes along with it. Bama, in most scenarios, wins the tiebreaker.
Wow.
Because there are no head-to-heads against everybody because you got 5 teams. Not everybody played everybody.
Georgia beat Texas, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's
Did Bama beat Georgia?
Bama beat Georgia and lost to Tennessee. Texas did not beat any of the other 4 teams. They lost to A&M and Georgia. Georgia beat Texas and Tennessee, but lost to Bama and Ole Miss. Tennessee beat Bama, lost to Georgia. Ole Miss beat Georgia, didn't lose to any of the other ones because that's the only team they played. So they didn't all play each other. So then you drop to the next one of common opponents. They didn't all play one common opponent. So then you drop to the next one.
What if it was like Vanderbilt or what if it was Mississippi
Honestly,
State?
Dude, you're not wrong. Mississippi State might, have a say in this because it goes to conference opponents' winning percentage in conference.
Oh.
And Mississippi State played Tennessee and Texas, and if Mississippi State beats Missouri or Ole Miss, one, it eliminates Ole Miss.
Yeah.
But then it adds another win to Mississippi State.
Makes the winning percentage
and then
better.
The winning percentage of like Tennessee and Texas goes up. It's crazy what could happen the next couple of weeks.
I am so bummed that Mizzou and K-State, Mizzou especially, because that's a 6 team then in that 2-loss situation.
Because they would have to beat Mississippi State and Arkansas, which is very doable.
But I'm bummed that Braden can't. I would love to just get more thoughts because it really would have potentially come down to the 10-2 Missouri Tigers being the SEC team left out of the playoffs. But K-State, on the other hand, with KU beating BYU, it really threw everything for a loop. There's a huge wrinkle involved. I'm kind of bummed. I'm really more upset about K-State losing because I think they had a pretty clear path to the college football playoffs.
Well, they needed Colorado to lose one more.
Well, I still think
still think
there's a chance that they could. Well, yes, even with
they could have BYU lose one more,
and that's kind of my point.
Because if they would have beat Arizona State and then BYU lost to Arizona State, then BYU would have
it's just
3
a bummer,
losses.
man.
So I mean, it's Who knows what's going to happen the next couple of weeks? There is a scenario that K-State gets there. I did the math this morning. You want to know the road for K-State to get to the Big 12 championship game?
So Colorado has to lose out.
So here's what happens. K-State wins out. That's obvious. They go to 6-3. They beat Cincinnati. They beat Iowa State. Arizona State loses out. They play BYU this week, and then they play rival Arizona.
Okay.
Could happen.
Possible.
Colorado loses out. They play Kansas this weekend. Then they play home to Oklahoma State.
Ooh.
That's going to be the toughest one.
The Fighting Mick Schaefers.
Yes. Baylor lose to either Houston or KU. And let me tell you, in the scenario of Colorado losing out, that would mean they lost to Kansas, and that would mean Kansas was playing Baylor
For a bowl game.
For a bowl game. Kansas is beating Baylor. So then if the Colorado happens, then I think the Baylor happens. TCU would then need to lose to either Arizona or Cincinnati. And then the Texas Tech West Virginia winner, because they play each other, would have to then lose their other game that they have. If all of those things happen, K-State's in the Big 12 championship. Who says that's not happening?
It's just that
easy. Tell me the person that says that's not going to happen.
Fact.
That is one hell of a labyrinth to get through to get to the final there.
Wow.
K-State went out, Arizona State lose out, Colorado lose out, Baylor lose to Houston or KU, TCU lose to Arizona or Cincinnati, and then Texas Tech, West Virginia, they play each other. Whoever wins that one then loses their other game. Boom. Dallas, baby.
Quick tidbit on KU. I could not get over, and by the way, I took Kansas over BYU.
So did
I think a lot of people
up.
did. But how much respect was given to that Kansas team, who at the time was 3-6, facing was it undefeated or 8-1 BYU? Undefeated BYU team.
Yeah.
A 3-6 team on the road.
Yeah.
Against an undefeated BYU top 10 team, and they were 2.5-point underdogs, which meant on a neutral field, it was basically a pick'em game. I thought that was incredible respect from Vegas. Obviously,
the bettors, the odds makers.
We obviously went with KU, and again, it just imagine if you weren't a college football fan and you saw that lineup, you'd say, "What the hell am I witnessing right now?" I'm obviously ripping the undefeated home team. I thought that was very funny.
It's funny because Kirk Herbstreit at College Game Day, when they did the picks and BYU Kansas part of the picks, the panel picked BYU, and then Kirk Herbstreit said, "There's something going on that somebody knows something here. Jaden Daniels playing great football. This thing's like a 3-point line. I'm taking KU." He's like, "KU's 3-6, BYU's undefeated. This is a 3-point line. Somebody knows something. I'm taking KU to win." He used sort of that same logic. The logic that we were using around here, certainly I was, is that look at the way KU is playing lately. They had a late fumble against K-State that cost them that game. We've seen some of the turnovers. They're playing better football. And BYU just came off that game against Utah in an incredibly emotional game. Are they going to be able to get up and get back and go? Certainly the bettors and the odds makers thought the same thing. So KU gives themselves an opportunity, a huge game this weekend against Colorado at Arrowhead. And then you got Baylor to knock off. You go 2-0 and you go to a bowl game, and it was like it was impossible. They needed to win 4 straight games against teams that 3 of them were top 25 teams.
How big is this for Lance Leipold?
It's huge.
I mean, I know everyone realizes he's the guy for Kansas. But with such a down year and what was such a optimistic feeling heading into the season, I mean, that was a huge disappointment.
Yeah.
To rally the troops, not roll over, not have your guys. I mean, the OC conversations, the quarterback conversations, and now you legitimately have a chance to still make a bowl game with this gauntlet of a stretch to end the season.
Yeah.
I mean, I think if you're a Jayhawk football fan, you have to feel even better about Lance Leipold as a head coach.
And you feel if they go to a bowl game, I think you feel better about this overall group of players. So Jaden Daniels, certainly you feel better as you if he continues to play this way. Eliminate the turnovers.
Jalen Daniels.
Well, Jaden Daniels, too. If Jaden Daniels played for KU, I would really like their chances.
Jaden Daniels should have played for Mizzou, so that would have been even more fun to talk about.
But Jalen Daniels, keep eliminating the turnovers these next couple of weeks if you win. And then, like this group of players, certainly offensively, you would have the all-time leader in rushing, yards and touchdowns in Devin Neal. And you got Grimm, that's what, second place all-time receiving touchdowns in KU history? Like this group of like offensive players that help turn around this program and have been there for now 5 years, 6 years. And it would show that they didn't quit on Lance Leipold. It would show that they still had fight and that they were a good team. And they got to a bowl. K-State, I'm going to be fascinated as to how they come out against Cincinnati this weekend because they've lost 2 in a row. And that was a devastating emotional loss. Chris Kleiman was emotional in the post-game locker room. He was emotional at the podium, talking about how bad he feels for the players. I think also it's probably emotions from a culmination of what has been a tumultuous month for Chris Kleiman, with his team, with what's going on with his family. That, he's talked a little bit about it, the family issues that have been taking place behind the scenes and the support he's received from the people around the program, from fans. Details aren't out there. They may be out there. Not my business to,
Sure.
Even dig or try to find out. You just know that the guy's going through something with his family, and it's been really hard on him and his family, and his wife. And as he said after the game yesterday, that things are a little bit better, Sun is coming up in the morning, things are a little bit better. He dismissed outright the talk about retiring.
Yeah.
Because he got dizzy on the sideline a couple of games ago. That was against KU. A little dizziness on the sideline. Then the conversation around his family, and it was like, okay, is this guy going to retire? And he was, I have no idea where that came from. I ain't retiring anytime soon. All right. I kind of dismissed that too, but it's like, okay, well, what if these things behind the scenes are like, you never know what's going on in a coach's life where he goes, it's best for me to walk
Sure.
away and just spend time with my family, and I've made a lot of money and I've been successful, and the most important thing now is to do that. Gene Taylor was like, we're fighting if he does. Yes.
Yeah.
He's like, hold on. If he retires, I'm going to fight this guy. He didn't say that, but he kind of said that.
He's 57, so give him one more
yeah.
year, and Jake Paul might fight him.
That's good call. Gene Taylor retires so he can take the bag against Jake Paul in the boxing match. That is exactly right. But I feel better in that Chris Kleiman is saying that things are doing better, but obviously something pretty rough happened in the family. So when he says things are getting better, whatever happened doesn't mean that it didn't happen. It means that maybe, you start to wake up, you feel a little bit better. I have no idea, but it's been a rough couple of games. How does the team respond and rally against a good Cincinnati team and try to finish this season off when you can still end up 9-3 and go to a pretty damn good bowl game? And there is still a path to a Big 12 championship. It is very, very, very slim. And we'll see how they respond as well. But, it's been a really surprising couple of games to watch K-State lose to Houston, and then what happened against Arizona State over the weekend. You just don't see a K-State team go and do that with an interception on the second play, 4th and 1 getting stopped, bad snaps. You finally get a touchdown. You don't get the 2-point conversion. You miss a 36-yard field goal. You have 2 turnovers and 2 turnover on downs and a 36-yard missed field goal in a game in which it's like you win and you're alive for the Big 12 championship. That just isn't something we've seen from a Chris Kleiman coach team.
Yeah, they're typically the team that does the little things.
Yeah,
I always
they
say
make other teams do that.
I say they're the anti-Missouri. Missouri never does the little things.
Yeah.
They're poorly coached, but they might have more talented players. K-State is the opposite. They might not have the most talented guys, but they typically do the little things and make other teams. They force them to make mistakes. Right? They end up a lot of times with similar records, all that stuff, but there's 2 very different paths of them getting there.
Yeah. And the funny thing about Mizzou and the making mistakes, the little things, is some of this can be what the odds were and what the spread was in some of these games in which Missouri's playing closer games. But in the last 2 years, they're 7-1 in 1-score games. Missouri
the Chiefs.
Yes, that's right. But they have losses by 34, 31, 10, 9, and 4.
Well, and I
Their
think
first loss in a 1-score game was on
South
Saturday
Carolina, but
against South Carolina.
You got to take into account what it comes down to for me, the K-State game that they won the 1-score game against.
Yeah.
Well, it came down to a 61-yard field goal that was originally going to be 56, but they didn't call.
Agreed.
Like sometimes
They didn't make it easy on themselves.
That's my point. When I say I think the players overcame the coaching, if that makes sense.
Well, yeah, because 2 of those 1-score wins last year was Middle Tennessee State and Memphis.
Yeah, and so for me, it's the players overcoming some of the coaching miscues. And again, I'm not saying fire Drinkwitz. I think Eli is the right guy for the job. I think he's a phenomenal recruiter, all that stuff. I just don't think that in game he does a great job. That's just my personal opinion. I don't know if it's too much on his plate.
I would like him to be more aggressive. I would like him to get closer to the person that Missouri hired, that he is so aggressive, it borders on irresponsible.
Yes.
on how aggressive he is and going for it. And now we got 4th and 2 inside the 10, field goal. I know we're losing, and I know South Carolina keeps going for 4th downs because they're trying to field goal, kick the field goal here. Let's go for a field goal. Like, that's not what was sort of he was a great recruiter. That has turned out to be the case.
Yes.
And he's got to figure out his coaching staff. He's had a lot of turnover there, and it sucks that you got to find a new defensive coordinator because that guy goes down to LSU.
Agreed, because he was a great DC.
We talk about Ketelnicki in Kansas. Mizzou losing their defensive coordinator could be as big of an issue for Mizzou this year because of how they struggled.
Good call.
Defensively. 913-912-4810 is the text line. So 2 weeks to play in college football, yet another college football playoff ranking. The crazy thing is, like, Texas is going to be the number 2 team tonight in the college football playoff rankings. Or number 2 or 3, depending on Ohio State or whatever. Well, I guess they'll probably be the number 3 ranked team, but the number 2 seed.
Sure. Because
Ohio State will be the number 2 ranked team, but wouldn't win the Big Ten, so they would have to be the 5.
Yeah.
Or the 6, I guess.
Yeah.
They'd be the 6, whatever it is. Well, no, they'd be the 5 because only 4 of the big conference. And Boise State, by the way.
Because Oregon powerhouse and the Big Ten.
Yeah, but only the top 4 conferences winners. So the 5th conference winner just goes into the wherever they're ranked.
But Boise State could technically still be the top 4 because they'd be a conference winner.
I think Boise State might be number 4.
Yeah.
I think Boise State might be number 4. We'll be ahead of whoever they project to be the Big 12 winner right now. But what's crazy is Texas beats Kentucky this weekend. Boom. They sit there with 1 loss going into the A&M game. If A&M beats Texas, it would give Texas 2 losses. They wouldn't have an awesome win on their resume.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm looking at it.
And if A&M goes and loses the SEC championship, they would have 3 losses, but they would have had to play an extra game to get their 3rd loss, and they would have the head-to-head over Texas. Could Texas go from being the number 3 ranked team in the country to losing 1 game against the team that's in the top 15 and then not make the playoffs at all?
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking at Texas's schedule, Michigan is not what we thought Michigan was going to be, right?
By the way, I think they would make the because the conference champion, they would then need probably 3 teams in the SEC. If that scenario plays out, the SEC would need to get 3 teams for Texas to make it.
I just think it's a really interesting conversation that Texas could actually be on the outside looking in if they lose to A&M. Because you're right, they wouldn't have a marquee victory.
No.
Their best win would be against Vanderbilt.
Yeah. And that's where it's like we look at Indiana's schedule. Like, what are they doing up there? Indiana hasn't beat anybody. And
Texas
what
had
about
a cakewalk this year. I mean, in fairness to Texas, they scheduled Michigan as a non-con.
And they got dominated by Michigan.
In Michigan. No, they beat Michigan.
Oh, that's what I meant. They beat Michigan. They dominated Michigan.
Michigan is, what's their record this year? They've won.
Can't say Indiana hadn't played anybody and then use Michigan as Texas has played somebody.
Oh, I'm with you. No.
They just Michigan and
they're 5-5.
They're 5-5.
5-5, and Indiana just played Michigan probably at a harder point in the season because they've probably gotten gelled a little better.
Yeah.
I'm with you guys. My point is
because they would both have beaten the same team.
Yeah.
Texas and Indiana would both have beaten Michigan.
My point is, I'm saying
I know your point.
Texas hasn't played anyone.
Yeah.
And again, going into this season, you thought, oh my gosh, Oklahoma might be pretty good. Florida, A&M, obviously that's the final game of the season. But you look at it, they've beaten Florida at home. They beat Arkansas in Arkansas, not a tough game. You beat Vanderbilt, that came down to the wire. You beat them by 3 points in Vandy.
Mm-hmm.
You lost to Georgia. You beat Oklahoma, okay, fine, but Oklahoma's not good.
Yeah.
So they don't. Their best win is literally at Vanderbilt, and I don't know how you become this is all if you lose to A&M.
Yes,
I don't get how that's
a College Station, by the way. So it's a road game. That thing is because that's gonna be if A&M wins this weekend, the winner of that game will go to the SEC championship game.
Yes.
So that will be for an SEC championship game appearance. Texas versus Texas A&M in the SEC for the first time in how long these two teams have played, and it's going to be to decide who goes. I just want A&M to beat Auburn this weekend and Texas to take care of Kentucky because, always want Kentucky football to lose, but they're twofold. And then to set up that Texas and Texas A&M game there at College Station to see who goes to the SEC championship game. Because, you would say, well, who has A&M played? Well, A&M lost to Notre Dame, but they would have beaten Texas. That's the point. They would have the win over Texas. They beat LSU. They beat Missouri. I mean, that's a hell of a win. Not many people are doing that this year. Only 3 teams.
But I will say
in the country have beaten Missouri this year.
That's still a better win than a lot of.
Out of all the football teams in America, only 3 of them have beaten.
But seriously, Missouri's a better win than almost anyone else on Texas's schedule. Yeah. I mean, I'm not even being facetious, right? That would maybe be their best win.
Because they also won by 31 points against Mizzou.
Yes.
They dominated them.
And if you look at, for example, Georgia. Georgia's beaten Clemson, hammered Clemson. They've beaten Kentucky in Kentucky. They lost to Bama by a touchdown. They beat
Texas and Tennessee.
Beat Florida, beat Tennessee. The only game they lost to by 2 scores was Ole Miss, but that was also down there in Oxford.
Yeah,
I mean,
and Georgia, by the way, is done. They're 6-2. They're the leader in they're in the clubhouse right now.
Yeah,
Georgia.
they're done.
Their conference schedule is over,
and they play Massachusetts and Georgia Tech, which is funny because they actually had a pretty difficult schedule until the final 2 weeks of the season. Then it's kind of a laugher. Yeah. But Georgia has maybe one of the more difficult schedules in the country. I don't know how you leave them out. Even if Texas, if you're well, they only lost 2 games. Well, Georgia's 2 losses are way more impressive.
Yeah. So then, so you have 2 lost Texas, 2 lost Georgia, and you'd have Georgia that beat Texas. You'd have A&M that beat Texas. Legit, if you say there are 3 SEC teams that go, the conference champion.
Yeah.
If A&M beats Texas to get there and then loses the conference championship, they would have, again, 3 losses, but you would be hurting them. And you would be taking them down a notch because they had to play an extra game. They would lose an extra game. Texas didn't have to play that extra game. A&M would have had to play that extra game, and they would have just beaten Texas to get there. And then, okay, well, what about Georgia? Okay, well, Georgia beat Texas and finishes with the same record. So who did Texas beat? Nobody.
Yes, I mean, again.
They could go from the number 3 ranked team in the country tonight.
Yeah.
To in 2 weeks not being in the college football playoff.
And I think
it
would be
weeks.
fair.
I think it would be absolutely fair. And we'd all be going horns down, and we love it. And Todd Lebo and all of us will pop some champagne.
I mean, Ole Miss, Bama, Tennessee, Georgia, A&M all had more difficult schedules. Yeah. I mean, they really had. It's just, wow.
Not only is it to get to the SEC championship game, I think Texas and Texas A&M might be a college football playoff elimination game too.
Oh, yeah.
So, I mean, it could end up being that. So,
and there's a talk from, what's his name? Paul.
Talking
about how.
Come on, Paul.
It might be, honestly, it might be a detriment to make it to the college, to make it to the SEC. Because if you lose, again, if you win, you're winning in. Yeah. But if you make it and lose, it's almost like Missouri against Oklahoma. I know, that hurts me too.
Well, that would have to be an athletic director buying their way into the college football playoff. And since this is a committee of people and not just some bowl organizers that let one AD go and buy their way into that particular bowl, then they'd be a little bit different. If this was a committee of people that were choosing the BCS teams and you couldn't just buy your way into that game, then that would be different. I would think. All right, we'll take a timeout. We'll come back, continue rolling. I want to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs. We'll talk with Adam Teicher coming up at 11 o'clock. We discussed a little bit the clip from Patrick Mahomes that we played about him saying a sense of urgency and that fourth quarter touchdown that, hey, we need to do that more often. So I want to play that clip again, and then that's sort of the jumping off point for something I was looking at last night that was a pretty big surprise considering what the reputation is around Andy Reid and this Chiefs offense. We'll do that coming up next. talk, 913-912-4810. Braden Gall coming up at noon. Todd Lebo at 1 o'clock. Factor Fiction. KU pregame, 5:30 tonight. UNC Wilmington and the Kansas Jayhawks going at there at Allen Fieldhouse. And then K-State and Mississippi Valley State.
Oh.
That's right.
The team Missouri won by 72 against.
Yep, and then they went and lost by 46 to Texas.
Hey, so Missouri better than Texas.
Yeah. Their road trip continues. They play at Missouri, at Texas, at K-State, at BYU, at Utah, at UC Santa Barbara, and then they return home on December 2nd to face off against Oakwood. Then they go on the road at Liberty, at North Texas, at Tulsa, at LSU, at Alabama State, at Alabama A&M, and then they return January 11th.
Do they have the toughest schedule in college? Their strength of schedule has to be one.
They play 1, 2. They play 2 games in 2024 at home. They play 2 games at home until January 11th.
Imagine being in the.
Then they play back-to-back games. Woohoo!
Imagine being in the SWAC and having the hardest conference in college basketball.
They are getting their money. They are making their rounds, collecting their checks. And
good for them.
Yep, absolutely. 913-912-4810. Let's talk a little Chiefs here. Let's play this clip from Patrick Mahomes, and we'll talk a little bit more about this with Adam Teicher because I want to get his thoughts on this, see if he has a theory or if this is the area that the Chiefs offense can use some improvement. But here's Patrick Mahomes. He was asked specifically about that fourth quarter touchdown drive that they got to pull within 2. And, we know the defense didn't get the stop. They went down and scored a touchdown. But the touchdown drive for the Chiefs in the fourth quarter, here's Patrick Mahomes after the game on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, you just kind of do or die. You gotta score, or the game's going to be over. And so we turned it on as an offense, and we were able to get down there and score a touchdown. But it wasn't enough today, and we got to have a better sense of urgency, or I have to have a better sense of urgency throughout the entire game.
That last part is what I heard on the post game, and then playing it again yesterday. That we have to have a better sense of urgency throughout the game.
We got to have a better sense of urgency, or I have to have a better sense of urgency throughout the entire game.
So I was thinking, last year, one of the storylines around this Chiefs team was they would score on their opening possession, and then they couldn't score again until the fourth quarter. It was like, okay, Andy Reid's first 15, what's happening after that? They're scheming their way to points, and the other team is adjusting, and then they're not just winning their battles one-on-one when they're adjusting back after they're past their first 15. That has not been the case this year for the Chiefs. And for whatever reason, the first quarter has been an issue for Patrick Mahomes. But what's also fascinating to me is that the first and third quarter combined. So in the first and third quarter combined, Patrick Mahomes has 2 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. Starting the game the first quarter, coming out of half the first quarter. The second quarter and fourth quarter, Patrick Mahomes has 13 touchdowns, 2 interceptions in the second quarter and fourth quarter. Is that the sense of urgency that you come out a little bit slow? I'm not sure. By the way, those 2 interceptions in the second and fourth quarter come on 50 more pass attempts, as opposed to 9 interceptions on 50 fewer pass attempts.
One was in the game that didn't matter.
Exactly. Thank you. That's exactly right. I was getting ready to say one of those interceptions was Sunday when they were down 9.
I'm trying to think of when the other one was. I don't know if the other one was when it was popped off of in the second quarter. Juju Smith-Schuster was what I was thinking.
So that's the only interception in the red zone for Patrick Mahomes, or goal to go this year for Patrick Mahomes. But not only that, so that's just looking at the quarters, right? Quarters individually. I wanted to look at the first drives of the game because those first 15s, what's happening in those first drives of the game. Some of this is a little skewed in terms of Patrick Mahomes' numbers because there are touchdowns, they're just rushing touchdowns. So Patrick Mahomes on the first drive of the game, those are 10 drives. He's 31 of 42. He has 300 yards passing, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Now they have scored 3 touchdowns on the opening drive. It's just
so 30%.
Been running, Xavier Worthy, Kareem Hunt. They've had, rushing touchdowns to start the game.
He's 31 of 42.
31 of 42 on the 10 drives to open
a
the game.
74% completion percentage. That's just
so he's been fine.
Just kind of checking it down. Yeah.
For 300 yards, he's been fine.
Yeah, he's been fine.
And if those rushing touchdowns were passing touchdowns, well then that first quarter stat of 0 touchdowns and 5 interceptions would then be 3.
You said 300 yards?
300 yards passing.
Trying to do some quick math on yards per attempt.
So
7.15.
It's fine.
So that's not horrible.
Yeah, so the first drive has been okay.
Yeah, it's been decent.
It's been decent. They have 24 total points on those 10 drives. You'd rather have more than 2.4 points per drive on your first 15 when you're opening the game. You'd like to have a little more rhythm. But sometimes, maybe it takes a little bit. You get out there, you run some plays, you're getting the juices going, you come over the sideline and you go, all right, now let's go. All right, here we go. Second drive. That is what was most stark to me, is that the Chiefs' second drives this year, which would be 10 more drives. So their second drive of the game, 10 drives, they've scored 10 points. 1 touchdown, 1 field goal, 5 punts, and 3 interceptions on the second drive. 2 of those interceptions are on the first play of the second drive, Cincinnati and L.A. The first play of the second drive were interceptions by Mahomes, both bad passes.
So everyone has a little bit of an understanding of what an average points per drive is, just so we can get a kind of baseline here. This is throughout the entire NFL. Okay. So this includes the Bills, the Detroit Lions, obviously the Chiefs. It includes the Panthers and some of the other inept offenses as well. It's every team. 2.03 average points scored per drive. 2.03.
And the Chiefs are at 2.4 on their first drive of the game.
So that's still
it's essentially average.
That's 20% more.
Yeah, it's
than average because let's say it's 2.
Yeah, you're right.
It's about.
So if you throw in the second drives of the game, which there's 10 of them because there's been 10 games, they've scored 10 total points. So that's 34 points in 20 drives to start the game for this Chiefs team. That's 1.7 points per drive. And of those 20 drives, they have 6 turnovers and 8 punts. Like when Mahomes talks about there needs to be more of a sense of urgency throughout the game, as opposed to, hey, in the fourth quarter we need it and now they're scoring. Well, at the beginning of the game, is it cavalier? Is it, not attention to detail? Is it willing to take more risks because you have the rest of the game? Whereas in the playoffs, you're not doing that. Whereas in the playoffs, there's a sense of urgency from kickoff. And that's why Mahomes went, 3-4 games in a row and has a couple of different playoff runs without throwing an interception. Yet, how many times in his career have we seen him go 3 games without throwing an interception? And yet in the playoffs, he gets there and just doesn't turn the ball over? Like, is there that? And you can't have the hyper elite focus for 17 games in every drive. That's not going to happen. That is impossible. They are not robots. They are professionals, but they are not robots. So it can't be expected to do that. But if you're talking about those first 2 drives, that's encompassing the first 15. And those first 2 drives, that's 20 drives that the Chiefs have had this year, and they've scored a total of 34 points. 20 drives, they have 4 touchdowns. 4 touchdown drives and 2 field goals to start the game. That coincides with what we've talked about at the beginning of the year, was the Chiefs' defense, for whatever reason, giving up a touchdown on the opening drive and then buckling down and shutting other teams out for the second and third quarter. So they were finding themselves trailing early on. But then in the second quarter, they'd turn it on and they'd score points, and Mahomes' second and fourth quarter is elite level. And hey, how are they winning close games? Well, they're getting points in the second quarter going into halftime, and they're scoring in the fourth quarter when they need to, and they're winning close games. Against Buffalo, they couldn't overcome that because they had the interception to start the game. They had the back-to-back 3-and-outs to start the third quarter. Like, that is not just the Buffalo game where you go, man, if they could have taken advantage in the third quarter when the defense came out and got 2 stops.
Yeah.
That's been this year. Starting the first quarter, starting the third quarter, for whatever reason, has been an issue for this team.
What's interesting is I would love to see if I can find all the numbers of Patrick when he's been in Kansas City in the second quarter. Because it feels like the second
quarter.
quarter.
Look at his career set. I'll look at his career while you're talking.
Because I think his second quarter has always been traditionally his best. Second quarter and fourth quarter. I always remember the Raiders game a few years ago. Whenever
they scored 4 touchdowns,
28 points, but that was it. It was only the second quarter. Like I feel like I remember the second quarter and fourth quarter for Patrick always being his best. Now I don't know how much credence there is to that. I would love to see if we can find some statistics to back that up. But
back that up.
You know, like I'm juvenile.
Yes, you are.
But
so let me.
That's what it seems like.
All right, so here we go. I've got his career splits. Patrick Mahomes' career in the first quarter. First quarter, he has 51 touchdowns, 17 interceptions, a 103 quarterback rating in his career. Second quarter, he's got 79 touchdowns, 21 interceptions, a 104 quarterback rating. Third quarter, he's got a 101.3 quarterback rating, 52 touchdowns, 17 interceptions. And the fourth quarter, 51 touchdowns, 19 interceptions, and a 98.5 quarterback rating. So
the second quarter is his best quarter.
Second quarter is his best quarter with touchdowns and also the quarterback rating.
Yeah.
That is it. He's got 79 touchdowns, so he has 27 more touchdowns in the second quarter than any other quarter.
Okay, so
the other quarters are 51, 51, and 52, and then 79 in the second quarter.
So my hunch was correct.
Yeah, no, well done. And he's also got 2,000 more yards in the second quarter. Now, what's also interesting is he has like 300 more passing attempts in the second quarter in his career than any other quarter.
Well, I wonder how much is the final 2 minutes of each half,
for sure,
which could totally play.
Makes sense. And in the fourth quarter, because they're winning so many games, that's his least amount of passing attempts.
You could be
because he's going to be running
the rock,
right? So it's a good point about second quarter when Andy's probably going into his bag and going, I can't help myself.
Treat every quarter like it's a second quarter.
I got to pass the ball. I can't help myself. I got to pass the ball here. I got to pass the ball. And then, of course, those late, you sometimes you get a couple of possessions there in the final 3.5, 4 minutes, and you got a little bit of tempo there. So that would make sense. But yeah, the touchdowns are up. The interceptions are roughly in line with the other ones with 300 more passing attempts, and the quarterback rating is a little bit higher. And this year it's been pretty stark. He's got 8 touchdowns and 1 interception on 124 passing attempts this year.
Yeah.
And he has 70, 72, and 73 passing attempts in the other 3 quarters. So the second quarter has been their best quarter, but that's after they get through their first and second drive. I don't know what's going on with that. Is that a sense of urgency? Something maybe Andy Reid could answer, Matt Nagy could answer, maybe Patrick Mahomes could answer. But their second drives have been the worst. They have 10 second drives, and they have 1 touchdown and 1 field goal in their second drive of the game. You would think maybe let's get over the sideline, see what's going on a little bit. All right, let's get back out there. No, it's been worse. And the first drives have been the exact opposite of what we've talked about in the past of, man, can the Chiefs carry over what their first 15 is? Boy, they go down the field, they score. This looks like it's going to be easy all day, and then it dries up. We'll take a timeout, come back, continue rolling. More Zone next. Do they have enough? I mean, they're 9-1. It's a loss. They lost by 9 points. It was a back-and-forth game. It was a closer game. They had opportunities. If they play that game 9 more times, do the Chiefs win, 5 of them? They go 5-4, and this is a 5-5 matchup with them and the Buffalo Bills. Who knows? Maybe the next time they match up, it'll be an Arrowhead in the AFC Championship game. We'll find out as the rest of the season goes along. But we'll talk with Adam Teicher about some of the things going on with this team. Defensively, pass rush, second cornerback, tackle situation, Patrick Mahomes, Xavier Worthy, Pacheco returning, Tyquan Thornton being signed.
Yeah, huge.
He's fast. He's fast. myself until 2 o'clock. We'll talk with Todd Lebo in the 1 o'clock hour, Fact or Fiction. An hour from now, we'll hang out with Braden Gall, get some more college football conversation going on. Throughout the next couple of hours, too, we'll sneak in some Major League Baseball with some news around Major League Baseball, some news involving the Royals in a sort of by proxy of what happened last night with the Rookie of the Year voting. By proxy affected the Royals. We'll get into that as well. And then the report about Brady Singer being shopped to Major League Baseball teams for a leadoff hitter, Jonathan India, being discussed for that. Let's talk about the Kansas City Chiefs. They fall to 9-1 on the season. Adam Teicher is our guest from ESPN Chiefs Insider, presented by Twin Peaks. Adam, welcome to the show. How are you, sir?
Good, Jason. How are you doing today?
I am doing just fine. The sky is falling, and I'm just joking. I haven't really seen – I've seen some, but not a lot. But the Chiefs did fall from the 1 seed down to the 1 seed after losing this game to the Bills. Let's start off with just a general takeaway and reaction from this game in which they lose by 9 points to a pretty good Bills team. What's your takeaway and thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, I almost sensed – and don't get me wrong, I don't think anybody was happy about the result, but I almost sense a little bit of a burden was lifted in the locker room after the game. You know, guys, I think the undefeated thing was starting to get a little heavy to carry around, and when they got all this other stuff on their plate, like a three-peat and all that stuff, you know, so. It just felt like maybe that a burden was lifted in the locker room, and now I'm eager to see how they handle this game on Sunday, and maybe they'll play a little more freely, and maybe this is the thing they need to unlock a blowout, or at least not a game that comes right down to the end. So we'll see, but that was just kind of my sense that I think guys were tired of having to talk about this and having several more weeks of this, if that's what it came around to. I mean, certainly they would have taken that because it means they would have won a game, but I feel like maybe there was some unburdening that happened on Sunday when they lost the game.
Yeah, I was of two minds yesterday when, doing more of listening in closer to the post-game stuff rather than, doing some Christmas decorating with the post-game show on my phone while walking around. Can't really hear and listen as intently as you'd like. And I was going back and forth on this, Adam. Like, there was part of me that was like, okay, yeah, this is something to where you can be unburdened with this. All right, you can move on and just focus on the ultimate goal, and that being the three-time Super Bowl champions. And then hearing Patrick Mahomes to a degree was like, well, the undefeated thing was cool, but that's not our ultimate goal. And it was like, okay, so was that something that was really on their mind other than it's cool right now, but we're trying to go out there and win a bunch of games? My takeaway and thought on this, Adam, was it eliminates any of that potentially happening down the road, because if they would have beat Buffalo, take care of Carolina, take care of Vegas, all of a sudden you're 12-0, then you're really talking undefeated. Then it's really within your sights of being an undefeated team.
Yeah, no doubt. And, that was one of the comments, Mahomes, when he said that, I'm like, okay, he doesn't seem like he's real upset about this, possibility of an undefeated season going away. So, there were other guys who said similar things.
Mm-hmm.
And, I just feel like it was becoming a burden for them. They've had to deal with so much, and they've handled it really well over the last couple of years. But they playing these big games and week after week after week. Now they added another level to it with this 9-0 thing, and I think it was starting to get a little much. Now they can just sort of worry about what their real goal was for the season and not having to finish 17-0.
Do you agree with Tony Romo's assessment after the game when the game was over, clock hit 0, the players are coming out to the middle of the field to shake hands, and Tony Romo says, I think this is a good thing. Not from he wasn't saying that it was a good thing that they lost the game, but he said, if they won this game, they would essentially have a 4-game lead on the Bills. They'd have the tiebreaker, and they would have 3 fewer losses. They'd have to lose 4 games over the final 7, and that's just not going to happen. He said they would eventually, essentially wrapped up the number 1 seed. And he goes, there's an element that maybe you start to coast a little bit, and you get those last 3 weeks, and you don't have that competitive drive, that fire, that edge going into the playoffs. Maybe he's positively spinning it. Maybe it's just trying to, polish a negative thought and find the glass half full when maybe there's not that much liquid in the glass. But his point was, if they're going to get the 1 seed, they're going to have to fight the rest of the way. They're going to have to be in these competitive games. They're going to have to keep their edge and be sharp so that when they go into the playoffs, then they will still have that, as opposed to the last month of the season is kind of just the runway, playing out the string before you get to the games that you really want to get to.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for that. I don't know how Andy Reid would have handled it. What if the Chiefs had gotten to, say, 14-0, and they had the number 1 seed clinched? And what would they have done? Would he? I can almost promise you he wouldn't have pushed hard to get to 17-0. But then you've got these 3 weeks of games that amount to basically a preseason, and then you're going to get a week off in the playoffs. So how do you handle all that? Do you give Pat Mahomes a month off and say, hey, Pat, we'll see you in January? I mean, I don't know what you do. And so, I think there's something to be said for that. I think if you're the Chiefs, you'd rather have beaten the Bills and lost in Carolina on Sunday. But, I guess it doesn't always work that way. You can't always choose.
Yeah, I mean, if they had their druthers do that, I mean, we've seen some undefeated teams lose strange ways. The Packers losing to the Chiefs.
Yeah, like that one, yeah.
It would have been a lot like Chiefs going to Carolina and lose, or it'd be like, well, when's the last time we saw something like that? Well, the Packers being undefeated and losing to a Chiefs team that was pretty bad. Those things happen from time to time. It is certainly interesting, but I would have liked to have seen the Chiefs have the option of resting players on Christmas Day, because if you rest players against the Broncos, it's 24, maybe 25 days between the Steelers game on Christmas Day and the divisional round, which is the same amount of time as preseason game number 1 to when they played the Ravens. And that's a long time to not play, and then your first game is going to be against a team that had to fight to get in the playoffs and just won a wild card game the week before, and they are clearly riding on a high. And that's where, to your point, that if they get to that, Andy Reid's going to have have a real decision to make against the Broncos. Do you play your guys and risk injury if you've already got the 1 seed locked up? Do you not play your guys, and now you're looking at 3+ weeks of not being out there and playing competitive football? It would have been nice if they could have rested against the Steelers and then came back and played against the Broncos, then had another week off, and then played in the divisional round. That would have been I think as close to as perfect of a model as you can get with how early their bye week was.
Yeah, no, that would have been an ideal scenario, given the fact that the Pittsburgh week is a short week, coming off a short week. They would have had the 6-day week when they play Houston. So, hey, there's been a lot of talk about an early bye for the Chiefs and how the NFL did them no favors. Well, they were due for an early bye. They've been getting late byes for a long time. But the thing that is the Chiefs I've not heard anybody with the Chiefs complain about an early bye. What they've complained about is this playing on 6 days of the week, that kind of schedule, and it's really coming home to roost here in the last few weeks. And that's what they think is unfair, is that they have all these weird weeks. They have one normal week the rest of the season. Between the Chargers game and then the Cleveland game the next week, that's the one normal week they have left. Otherwise, from here on out, they're dealing with weird weeks, whether they're extended weeks or short weeks or whatever they might be. And Andy Reid's not real thrilled with that, I can tell you that.
And what's a little scary about this one is you never want one loss to turn into two. The Chiefs are, pretty veteran team, but we've seen them have some head-scratching losses before. Raiders on Christmas Day last year. You're coming off a tough-fought Buffalo game, coming off a tough-fought Denver game, coming off an overtime game against Tampa Bay, and now they're facing off against a Carolina team that's won 2 in a row, and they were on the bye last week. I mean, Carolina was sitting at home and resting, and the Chiefs now go there, and Carolina I firmly believe Carolina is going to view this game and throw the kitchen sink at the Chiefs and say this is a organizational turning point for the Panthers if they can beat the Chiefs, to show that the new coach and the free agent acquisitions they made, whether it's Bryce Young or not at quarterback, he's already been announced that he'll be starting this game. But the feeling I get around there in Charlotte is this is being viewed as a potential organizational turning point against the Chiefs this weekend. That's a lot thrown into a game where the Chiefs have played 3 tough games and they're playing against a team that's like, they might have the number 1 pick and we just lost to Buffalo. We'll be fine in this game.
Yeah, no, I think this game's going to be more difficult than maybe a lot of Chiefs fans think it is. I mean, this is not, get off the plane, show up at the stadium on time, and you've got to win. I mean, no, I think that Chiefs going to have to work for this one, and doesn't mean I necessarily think it's coming down to the end, but it wouldn't surprise me if it did. So I think there's some more minefields here than most people think.
Visiting with Adam Teicher from ESPN. What level, let's start and look into some of the things that happened in that Buffalo game, and then as we move forward, what level can this offense get to, do you think? If let's say they're at a 5 right now, let's say they're at neutral, whatever level they can get to or fall back to, let's say what we've seen is a 5. How much more is there in the tank for this Chiefs team if they're hitting on these Xavier Worthy passes, if Pacheco comes back and adds another element, if Hollywood Brown, what level do you think this team can get to offensively from what we've seen so far?
No, if you're saying what we've seen as a 5, I think they could get to maybe a 7. The rest of the year if they get some things ironed out.
So a couple levels up, that if they can, fix some things, get some guys back, block a little bit better.
Yeah, well, yeah. And, I'm tempted to say that, okay, they played 10 games. They kind of are what they are. But, look at last year. What they were in week 15 or whatever it was against the Raiders, by that point in the season, they weren't. That's not who they were in the playoffs. Yeah. So they did make improvements. And it was more defensively in 2019, but it's easy to forget now. The Chiefs were 6-4 that year, after 10 games.
That's right.
And then their defense really picked it up from that point on. They led the league in scoring defense from that point on, and the defense played well during the playoffs. And so, these improvements can be made. So while I'm tempted to say they are what they are, no, I think it can happen for them.
No, I'm with you. There's this. It's a weight scale and back and forth, the angel devil, right? It's on one side, you go, they play 10 games. I mean, you are what you are at this point, okay? At what point do you go, hey, the offense can play better and they've got this these next couple levels they can get to? On the flip side, we've seen how close the connection is with Xavier Worthy. I'd be more worried about the Mahomes and Xavier Worthy, connection or lack thereof at times if he wasn't getting open. If it's like, man, they're taking shots, but he's guarded. Mahomes is throwing some things down the field, but, man, that guy is right on him, and he's on his hip pocket. And there's just, it's going to have to take a perfect throw from Mahomes to get there. We've seen Xavier Worthy schemed where he's running wide open. There have been 3 of them. They're 0 for 3 in the last 3 weeks of connecting on those wide open throws. One of them, 1.5 Mahomes, 1.5, or 1 1/4 Mahomes, 1 3/4 Xavier Worthy, in the reason they're not connecting. But I'd be more concerned if we didn't see opportunities that are there. And by the way, watching the All-22 last night, Adam, there were a couple of other plays to where Xavier Worthy was running free in the secondary. It's just Mahomes was being hit quickly, and he didn't have time to let the route develop. I think both of those things combined is where the improvement can come from, them connecting. And if you have a little bit more time to let those routes develop, there were Andy Reid was scheming Xavier Worthy open in that game against Buffalo. Yeah, well,
Worthy's the key to the Chiefs getting more big plays, and that's where they've lagged this year. And we talk about how they get going from a 5, as you said, offensively to a 7, getting more big plays.
Yeah.
And that's to me is the key to the last 6 games or last 7 games, and then what the Chiefs do in the playoffs. Can they get more big plays? And so, you think they're there, but the one thing that gives me a little pause is, we've heard Andy Reid say this a lot. He says, hey, I don't mind guys making a mistake, but I don't want them making the same mistake twice.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Xavier Worthy just made the same mistake twice.
Yeah.
When by not getting his feet in bounds in Buffalo, and so, hey, he's only 21 years old. I'm certainly not going to give up on him at this point. But when's he going to get it? I mean, you feel like, okay, he was probably coached on this, whatever the coaching point was. He was probably coached if Andy Reid doesn't want a guy making the same mistake twice, and here we are talking about it again. So, are they going to get it right? I mean, I'm not buying Mahomes' dive on the sword after the game the other day that he's got to be better with that. No, that to me, just like the one against Tampa Bay, is on Xavier Worthy.
I think there's an element of Mahomes because it could have been a 70-yard touchdown, but I put it at 80-20 yesterday, Adam. I said 70-30 or 80-20. I landed on 80-20 because I said, you know what, 80-20, because at minimum that should be a 35, 40-yard gain. They should have 1st and 10 at the Buffalo Bills 30-yard line at minimum. So the fact that was incomplete, that's 80% on the wide receiver, that I think every wide receiver in the NFL should catch that and get 2 feet in bounds. Could Mahomes have laid that more up the field and Worthy catch it and then turn up and, have the speed that nobody's going to catch him and it's a one-play 70-yard touchdown drive? Yeah, certainly. So there's the 20%. But at minimum, that has to be a completion. You have to catch that ball. The ball was going to land 1 yard out of bounds, and yet you still couldn't get your feet in. Like, that's unacceptable at the NFL level.
The fact that was not a touchdown was maybe more on Mahomes. I'll give you that. But the fact that was not a big gain was unworthy.
It was unworthy. Visiting with Adam Teicher from ESPN. What do you make of Andy Reid saying that, need to dial some things back to give some players more opportunities? And then the follow-up yesterday was, what do you mean by that? And he said motions and shifts and doing less of those things and back off those things to give more opportunities to players. What do you make of that? Are guys confused? Is it Xavier Worthy confused? Is it DeAndre Hopkins? Is it, what did you hear from that when Andy Reid says, to dial motions and shifts back to give opportunities to players?
Yeah, well, we'll see what they do and whether indeed they do that. Mm-hmm. But, that was sort of an interesting comment. And, it's going to be interesting to see what they do mean by that. I really don't know. I don't think the Chiefs are, what they're doing is too complex for guys. So maybe he feels like some of that stuff's taking him out of position to make a play. I don't know. That's a good question. I'm eager to see what comes out of this, if anything.
Yeah, I don't know that it's going to be to the degree that we saw after the Raiders game when they said, I'm going to paraphrase. I don't remember the exact quote, Adam. You may, but it was something like, "We're going to get back to the things we know." Just do the things we know. And then they, the offense got more into, let's just take what's there. If that means we have to play a defensive style game manager to a degree, ball control, complimentary football, then that's how we're going to play, because that's how we can win the Super Bowl. And let's run the plays we know that we think can be successful. I don't know that it'll be to that degree, but there's an element of that coming from Andy Reid when saying we need to dial back some of these things to let the players just go out and play. And we'll see if that happens against the Panthers or if there's, just sort of lip service to that degree.
Yeah, well, the thing that caught my attention of his comments after the game were, hey, maybe I should have run the ball a little more. And to me, that was a little more meaningful because, A, you don't hear him saying that a whole lot, and he hates to do that. So that's going against his nature, but he will if he has to. And we heard Matt Nagy talking about this. Was it last week or 2 weeks ago? This is the identity of the Chiefs this year. I mean, you like it or don't like it. I mean, they still need to get more big plays. They're still going to have to find their way with the passing game. But that running game is a great thing to rely on when it's working. And I feel like they should, against Denver, it wasn't working so well. But other than that, they've been doing a pretty decent job with it. And I do feel like they are guilty at times of giving up on it or getting away from it too quickly.
Yeah, they had their season-long run with Kareem Hunt there in the second half, gaining 17 yards. But even before that with the running game, which was why it was a little surprising that it was abandoned, because I think that is one of the weaknesses for the Buffalo Bills. And so you start the game with Xavier Worthy on a 7-yard end around, which, watching the All-22, I think that could have been housed. Honestly, like he cuts in front of Humphrey and Jawan Taylor as they're sealing the alley. We get a seal here and a seal here. We're going to run this in the alley. You got Juju on the outside blocking the wide receiver, and Creed Humphrey and Jawan Taylor's butt is to the sideline. And Xavier Worthy cuts in front of him and gets tackled. And if he goes behind him, there's only one guy, Taylor Rapp, back there, and Jawan Taylor is scraping to the next level. Like, that thing might have been – I didn't realize it at the time, right? But those things happen. So, anyway, they gained 7 yards there. The next after the interception, the next possession, incomplete pass, but then Kareem Hunt picks up 5 yards. But then they, get sacked and they punt. Next possession, Kareem Hunt 4 yards. Kareem Hunt 4 yards. Mahomes to Xavier Worthy for 31. Kareem Hunt 5 yards. Kareem Hunt 4 yards. Like, they went and scored a touchdown in a drive where they were – a little more concerted effort to run the ball. The next possession, incomplete to Worthy, the play we're talking about, incomplete, and then sack. And they punt it again. They come back the next one. Kareem Hunt, McCole Hardman, Caliendo picks up the first down. You got Kareem Hunt, and then Mahomes hits Noah Gray for the touchdown. Like, I see his point about, we should probably run the ball a little bit more, because while they didn't have a bunch of 17-yard gains, Kareem Hunt was picking up 4 and 5 and 4 and 3 and 6 and 4. It was pretty consistent of what they were doing on early downs. We just didn't see it enough. And I would guess if the Chiefs play the Bills again, that might be a bigger part of the game plan. Randy Reed says, you know what, I'm gonna be more disciplined here, and we're gonna run the ball with these guys. And if it's not working, we'll base it off that. But if we're getting 2nd and 4s and 2nd and 5s, we're gonna be pretty darn successful here offensively.
Yeah, well, part of the problem right now is they've really got one back they can go to for a big number of carries, and that's Kareem Hunt. But that's about to change here, and probably even as soon as Sunday's game. So I want to see how that's handled, and how not just how he splits up the work and the carries, but does he give both guys a pretty healthy dose? So Andy Reid, he's always going to be a pass first guy, but I'm eager to see whether this is going to be more of their plan going forward here.
Let's talk about that. I also want to talk about Patrick Mahomes' comments about having more urgency throughout the game. I went and looked at that last night and saw something that was pretty stark from years past that I want to get your thoughts on. And we'll talk some defense, and then, of course, breakdown of what you think the Panthers game might look like. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back hanging out with Adam Teicher. He is from ESPN Chiefs Insider, presented by Twin Peaks. More Zone next. with Adam Teicher right now, talking some Chiefs football. Our Chiefs Insider from ESPN, presented by Twin Peaks. We talked a lot about the things in the offense that maybe we saw in Buffalo and things that could be improved upon. Adam, I wanted to get your thoughts on these particular numbers that I found. I'm going to try to make it as radio packaging appropriate as possible because sometimes that's difficult with numbers. But to the degree of, in years past, we would talk about the Chiefs' first 15 and they'd go and score, and we've had conversations about, well, why aren't they scoring after that? Why is it drying up that they're scoring on their first possession and then nothing after that? So I went and looked with Patrick Mahomes saying we need more of an urgency throughout the game and not just the final drive. I'm like, all right, let me go and look at the first drives, the first quarters, things like that. And the first thing I'll ask you is if you can, if you have an idea as to his numbers in the first and third quarter, if there's a correlation causation here with the first and third quarter as opposed to the second and fourth quarter. So Patrick Mahomes this year, Adam, in the first quarter and third quarter combined, has 2 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. And the second quarter and fourth quarter has 12 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Any connection that you can find there before I get into another thing that I wanted to bring up when it more at the way beginning of the game? But any connection there that you can maybe find? Is that just through 10 games, anomalies happen? That second quarter touchdown might have been the first play of the second quarter, or it could have been a first quarter. What do you think of those numbers that are that stark? 2 touchdowns, 9 interceptions versus 12 touchdowns and 2 interceptions. Or 13 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. Sorry.
I think the Chiefs ought to start Carson Wentz and start him in the second half as well. And then bring in Mahomes as the relief pitcher in both halves.
I love it. That's a great idea.
Yeah, you know, I don't know. It is that's a weird phenomenon, and you know, I took his comments to mean, you know, when he said, "Hey, we need a more sense of urgency," is that you know, these games, even though they haven't played as well as they would have liked in the first 9 games, they were always the ones making the play at the end, and you can't always rely on that, and you know, that was his way of reinforcing that, but those are interesting numbers for sure.
Yeah, because he's got 50 more pass attempts in the second and fourth quarter with 7 fewer interceptions. So maybe there's a sense of urgency or not. Well, and to my point about the first 15 and the first drives of the game, they have had 10 drives, first drives of the game in these 10 games. And in those 10 drives, they've scored a total of 24 points, which is right around league average for points per drive. At 2.4. League average is around 2.0 something, but 2.4. They have 3 touchdowns and 1 field goal. They've punted 3 times, and they've turned the ball over twice. So that's the first drive of the game. It's not the way that we remember it being, to where 4 out of 10 drives they've scored on, even a field goal so far this year. What really stood out, though, Adam, is the second drive of the game. The second drive of the game, they've had 10 of those. They've had 2 scores. They've had 1 touchdown and 1 field goal. They've got 5 punts and 3 turnovers, all interceptions by Patrick Mahomes on the second drive, meaning the first 2 drives of the game this year for the Chiefs, 20 total drives, they've scored 34 points. And that's the beginning in the first 15, right? That's supposed to be when they're scheming things up. They've turned the ball over 6 times. They've punted 5 times. They have 4 3-and-outs. They also have a turnover that was on a fake punt. So technically a turnover on downs, but still it was going to be a 3-and-out. Anything to glean from that to where, you know, I didn't even think about going and looking at that until Patrick said, you know, got to have a sense of urgency throughout the game. But anything to take away from that it just seems like the first 15 is not doing what we've seen in years past?
Well, those turnovers mess up everything.
That's true.
That is something that, and it's not just that it could cost them points or, you know, could put the defense in a bad position. It messes up when coaches talk about a rhythm. They talk about being able to call plays where one follows the other, and they can start making some sense. They can start getting to things they want to do. But when you turn it over, then it takes longer to get to what you want to do. The whole thing is disjointed when you're turning the ball over like that. I mean, I wasn't aware of that many turnovers, on the first couple possessions of the game, and that makes the whole thing just more difficult. And I'm wondering, now that you're talking about this, I'm going to have to go back and look at the 10 games and see how they did in the games where the first 2 possessions of the game were turnover free. How did those go for the Chiefs? Without a turnover interrupting it.
Yeah. So Baltimore, they had a touchdown and then a punt. And the first drive was a touchdown. Patrick Mahomes only needed a couple. He was 2 of 2 for 27 yards on that drive, but they scored a touchdown against Baltimore. Cincinnati, the second possession interception. Atlanta, first possession interception. Chargers, second possession interception. New Orleans, touchdown and then a punt. San Francisco, fake punt, turnover, interception. Vegas, touchdown and then a punt. Tampa Bay, punt and then a field goal. The Denver Broncos, punt and a punt. And then Buffalo, interception and a 3-and-out.
Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong, but the ones that didn't have a turnover in the first 2 possessions, those were some of their better games, higher scoring games when it was all over.
Yeah, Baltimore.
Not just the first 2 drives.
Yeah, Baltimore, New Orleans, Vegas, and Tampa and Denver. Yeah, Denver would be the only one, but that was a couple of punts to start off with. They didn't turn it over, but they went 3-and-out a couple times.
Okay, all right. Well, that one's the outlier a little bit there, but. I just think any play caller would tell you when your thing is interrupted and you've got plans for what's to come and you can't get to it because you're all of a sudden the offense is off the field. That makes it a lot harder.
Yeah, it's interesting just looking at that. I didn't realize the way you looked at it. That's great because it didn't even dawn on me to see how many games have they even played to where they didn't turn the ball over in one of their first 2 possessions of the game. And that's pretty interesting with this Chiefs team. Defensively, one of the things I looked at with this Buffalo game is like, all right, why'd they lose? Well, I mean, yeah, they could score more points, certainly. They could get some stops more often. Third down was a big issue, 9 of 15 on third down for the Bills, and 6 of those 9 conversions were 6 yards or more. I think the biggest reason they lost, Adam, is because they went up against a superstar quarterback in Josh Allen who made superstar plays at certain times. And we've seen Patrick, like the run by Josh Allen, Adam, we're going to see on Josh Allen's highlight reel the rest of his career and in the Hall of Fame speech, right? Just as the Titans are going to see Patrick Mahomes' playoff run down the sideline in the AFC Championship game, forever. What do you point to? Is it as simple as like, yeah, there were plays to be made on both sides. Those things happen in a game, but number 17 was pretty badass in that game, and Josh Allen.
Yeah, no, he was great. You take your hat off to him. Yeah. I mean, it's tough to beat that, but that's the kind of guy the Chiefs are going to see in the playoffs. Yep. They're going to see, maybe Lamar Jackson, and they're going to see Josh Allen. So you've got to defend them a little better than that. And the Chiefs really miss Jalen Watson. That's becoming evident. That's maybe a bigger loss than we gave it credit for at the time. I thought he was picking on Najee Johnson the other night, and it's a big step down from what Jalen Watson was given to the Chiefs to what his replacements are giving the Chiefs right now, and it's showing. I think that's a factor in what's going on here, and it certainly was a factor in Buffalo.
Why do you think Uche only got 5 snaps in that game
against
the Bills?
He hasn't played a whole lot, that's true, and there hasn't been a whole lot of impact from him. And I was expecting more. I thought they were pretty excited to get him and thought that was going to be a bigger thing. So that's something to be asking about because you're right, he's not been playing a whole lot.
My I'll wait and see approach with that, and we'll hear from Steve Spagnuolo in what could be a reasonable explanation for that, is Spags may have wanted more gap integrity rushing against a guy like Josh Allen as opposed to a smaller speed guy that'll get around the edge and maybe open up a lane for Josh Allen to escape to, like George Karlaftis when he spun back inside and it created Josh Allen to get outside the pocket and have an easy pitch and catch to Mac Hollins. Maybe there was that element of it to where, well, this is what he does, and it's not how we want to go against Josh Allen specifically. We'll see. All right, Carolina this weekend. The Chiefs are now 10.5-point favorites. That has moved a point towards Carolina. So I think the bettors are on the line of what you and I sort of think may happen. But what do you have in this game, how it goes, and maybe a final score in mind?
Yeah, well, I mean, I do think there's some danger here. For Andy Reid, I think the best thing that could have happened was the Panthers winning a couple of games here, because now he can go into his team and they won't be laughing at him, when he tells them there's some danger here. So, that there is some danger. Bryce Young's playing better and Chuba Hubbard is running the ball well. So, I could see them shortening the game. I think there's some things for the Chiefs to clean up on defense. And, are they going to be able to get Carolina off the field? That's what I'm wondering here. Better than they got the Bills off the field. Can they do that more effectively? If they can, then I think, when the Chiefs have the ball, the matchups are going to be a lot better on Sunday, and I can see a relatively easy win. But if, Carolina's going to go on some long drives and be able to run the ball and let, Bryce Young's going to make some plays, this might be a little trickier than people think. So I'll go with the Chiefs, maybe 27-17, something like that. But wouldn't surprise me if it's closer than that.
Yeah, the score I have in mind right now is like 21-10. And when it was 11.5, I'm like, well, they don't cover at 21-10, and it's a little closer than maybe people would have wanted in that game. We'll see what ends up happening. Adam Teicher from ESPN. Great stuff as always, Adam. Appreciate the time, brother. Enjoy the football this week, and we will talk next week.
All right, Jason, talk to you then.
Absolutely. There's Adam Teicher from ESPN, Chiefs Insider. He is presented by Twin Peaks when we have him on, and he's got the Chiefs 27-17 against the Panthers this weekend. And, yeah, I think there's an expectation that the Chiefs are going to go into Carolina and just mop the floor with the Panthers and just dominate that team. And it's a team that's won 2 in a row, whether that's against New Orleans and the New York Giants. It is a team that's won 2 in a row. David Carr did play in that game for the Saints. It wasn't like it was Spencer
David
Rattler.
Carr played?
And Derek Carr did as well. Both the Carrs played in that game. It was odd.
Was it like Cars 4? Like, what did Tomater come out? Or Mater come out?
Mater. And so they beat the Giants overseas, but they have a bye. They're coming off a bye. And the Chiefs are coming off 3 weeks in a row where they play overtime. They play a tough game against Denver where they get a blocked field goal, and then they go to Buffalo in an emotional game back and forth in which they, lose that game. You go to Carolina thinking, all right, we're just going to walk out there and roll our, helmets on the field, and we're going to beat this Carolina team. Whereas what you hear or read in Charlotte is potential organizational shifting game. If you can show in year one of your coach and the free agents you signed, and yes, you've traded some guys away and you're rebuilding, and even with Bryce Young, if you can show that you can beat the back-to-back champs at home, then it's clear this organization is on the right path, and these players are the guys that can help get you there. That's a dangerous team that's viewing this game like that, the biggest game of the season for them, and the Chiefs are coming off a loss to the Bills, and I think they clearly have championship pedigree. They've won 3 of them. So the culture around there, I think, will keep them with a W in the column this weekend. I just don't think they're going to walk out there and go up and down the field and beat them like they did the Bears last year when Taylor Swift showed up to Atlanta.
It's like, how often do they do that? It's very
Bears last year.
No, I know, but that,
like I'm agreeing with you.
But it's like you can remember like one time, and you're like,
you remember it.
It doesn't really
because it stood out.
Yeah, it doesn't happen often. So no. It'll be a 13-12 game or something stupid where I'm having a heart attack. But
no, it can't be that.
It can be. Those are numbers, Jason.
They are. You're right. It can be. There have been 13-12 games before. I would like it to be like 24-7, and then they get like a touchdown late or something. It's 24-14. It's like, oh, that happens. Whatever, as long as it's Chuba Hubbard. We'll take a timeout. We'll come back, continue rolling. More Zone next. All right, hanging out here on this Tuesday edition of The Zone. Thank you to Adam Teicher joining us. We will talk with Braden Gall coming up in the noon hour, and we'll talk with him some college football as the next round of college football playoff rankings come out tonight. News in the NFL, the Jets have fired general manager Joe Douglas after 6 seasons. So after acquiring Aaron Rodgers to begin last year, Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas that were going to turn the Jets organization around. Aaron Rodgers' injury, obviously. And then heading into this year, finally getting Aaron Rodgers healthy, they have now fired their head coach and their GM. I'll tell you what, it's all fixed now in New York.
They're all good.
Now that Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas are out, it's fine.
And the Giants are fine, too, turning to Drew. Yeah. Oh, no, wait. Tommy DeVito.
Drew DeVito? Tommy Lock? Or Drew DeVito? Tommy Gunn. Tommy DeVito.
The Giants have solidified that there will never, ever be a off-season Hard Knocks again. Because no team is going to want to sign up for that and expose what they're doing and then have it turn out the season like they had.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. And you can go back, and obviously everyone's probably seen the John Mara Saquon bit, but there's a lot more than that.
Yeah, and Saquon's been an MVP candidate. I mean, he has elevated that Eagles offense. I mean, honestly, that's one of the storylines of the season to a degree is like what some running backs have done. Like, Joe Mixon's the MVP of the Houston Texans, not C.J. Stroud.
I'd rather see Danny DeVito than Tommy DeVito.
Agreed.
insider Braden Gall.
Nobody cares.
Now in the zone with Jason Anderson on Sports Radio 810 WHB.
Everyone has their own taste, and mine is just better.
All right, we continue right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB. Jason Anderson with you. Sterling Holmes, Dylan Michaels, heading up until 2 o'clock. We'll talk with Todd Lebo coming up in the 1 o'clock hour. Play a little fact or fiction with Todd Lebo, 913-912-4810. Let's talk some college football. Braden Gall, owner of the 440 Sports Podcast Network, ESPN Radio, Athlon Sports as well. Braden, welcome into the show. How are you, sir?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I am doing just fine. Rough weekend for some of the local schools here. K-State, Mizzou, Chiefs, KU getting a win there in BYU. One of the things that we talked about last week is that KU could go there and win. I think we both picked them to go and win that game. I want to start off with K-State, though, here from the local perspective, Braden. This is probably, I would say, the most surprising couple of weeks that I can remember with Chris Kleiman as the coach at K-State since, the first year when he was, getting things rolling there. Once you saw that Chris Kleiman and what K-State was capable of doing, losing in Houston, 24-19, and then Arizona State coming in and just, dominating out of the gates the first 20 minutes of the game, being up 21-0. I hadn't seen a team sort of do that to K-State where there were turnovers and big plays and couldn't get off the field. They fight back a little bit and lose 24-14. What do you make of what these last couple of weeks have been with a bye week mixed in with, everything on the line, a chance to the college football playoff, and they've fallen short a couple of times?
Yeah, I think it was sort of like the like how it unfolded the first, and it's probably you probably go even further than just the first 20 minutes. I mean, they didn't score until mid third quarter. So when you look up and you see sort of like the big plays, the explosive plays happening, that was like certainly we could discuss the quarterback and sort of his mistakes and some of the things that happened. But like really what was more sort of startling to me was just like I guess it's breakdowns on defense where you're just whether it's poor coverage, missed tackles, run fits, kind of whatever. Like you're just giving up these big plays, and it's like that's something you just don't see very often from a Chris Kleiman coach team. So. To your point, I think that was, the final, let's call it 20 minutes of the game, fourth quarter, and then like half the third, like it felt more like the game we were supposed to see,
Yeah.
But because you just don't see the breakdowns as often on that side of the football. Like a young quarterback having a bad game, making some mistakes, whatever it might be. I actually got text messages from folks in Nashville who were like, "What's wrong with Avery?" And I was like, "What are y'all talking about? Like, why are y'all texting me about a Kansas?" And I thought they were talking about like something else. And they're like, "No, we're watching the Kansas State game." And I was like, "Oh, okay. First of all, this is clearly the college football playoffs impact on Nashville.
Amazing.
Because like nobody in Nashville is watching the Arizona State Kansas State game unless you are like a Tennessee fan trying to get into the playoff, or a Georgia fan, or Alabama fan, or whatever, which is hilarious to me. But again, I do a bunch of other radio shows around the South a lot during the weeks, and people are like, "Give me something to watch outside of Tennessee, Georgia," and I was like, Kansas, BYU, Kansas State, Arizona State, and people are like, "Okay, I get it." No, seriously, you guys need to watch those two games because those two could have two playoff spots on the line, two teams fighting for playoff spots, and sure enough, look what happened. So I think the defensive breakdowns early in the game were just the startling part to me.
Yeah, I mean, we just don't see like those. Certainly stand out. Two turnovers on downs, a missed 36-yard field goal, snapping problems. I mean, they had first and goal at the 5 and 4 plays turnover. Second play of the game was an interception. Like it's odd.
I think it was sloppy.
Yeah, for sure. And coming out of a bye week is a little surprising. This is not an excuse at all or blame or anything. I'm not asking a question because I want a certain answer. I'm actually just asking the question because I'm curious. Your thoughts, and if there's anything that maybe you can remember of a team playing like this and sort of unfocused, it seemed like, coming off a bye week when the coach has had a pretty tumultuous couple of weeks, not in any of his own doing. There's some family things going on behind the scenes, and it's been a really emotional time for Chris Kleiman, and the details aren't really out there, but he's talked about how tough it's been on his wife and how everybody sort of rallied around him and his family, and It's been really difficult. You know, he was dizzy. He had the dizzy spell against Kansas on the sideline. There are now rumors about whether or not he's going to retire. He outright dismissed those yesterday at his press conference. But again, not an excuse or not blame or anything. And he took the blame, and the K-State players were like, that's absurd. They gave us the game plan. We didn't execute. This game is on us. It ain't on the coach. It's not on Chris Kleiman. But is there anything you remember of when those things behind the scenes are going on? Yeah, go ahead.
How could there not? And that's not to truly, sometimes we get into this, and I know we're on sports talk radio, so sometimes in sports talk radio everything gets very reduced down to its simplest form, and then it's oh, you're pro or you're against, you're positive, you're negative, you're a hater or you love it, you're a homer, and that's just not where the world lives. It's not where young athletes live. It's not where football games operate. Everything is gray. Everything is on the margins. Everything is human psychology. All this stuff factors in. So if you're having to shoot down retirement questions and you are openly going through whatever it is you're going through, but a difficult and stress-inducing situation, that's why it's called stress-inducing. You know what I mean? It's not and that could be anything. My family's been through a ton of stuff. We've lost parents. We had a pandemic. We had a tornado hit our daycare. Don't tell me it doesn't affect my wife and I's ability to do our job. And we don't do anything important. So. It's just I don't know how it wouldn't be a factor, because again I was watching that first half and I'm going what's hilarious, and this is just sort of my personal journey through this, is I'm sitting there going man, I cannot remember the last time I saw a Chris Kleiman defense do this, and I was oh, that's right, earlier this year against BYU, and that's not but again those two are the only ones I can think of, but it definitely has happened this year before, and so the other thing about this, and this is the other part that is kind of baked into the conversation we're having, where it's not black and white, it's not simple, it's not easy to explain. The other team is doing a good job too. Yeah. Kenny Dillingham is coach of the year type candidate right now, if not for Dion at Colorado or Kalani at BYU, coach of the year type candidate at Arizona State, and the job he's done developing a young quarterback and the buy-in that organization has given him as an alumni at that school, that's an extraordinary job that he's done with that coaching staff or with that team. And so sometimes you have to remind yourself oh, the other team has 85 players on scholarship and a coaching staff getting paid millions of dollars as well. So you sometimes have to just, you sometimes have to tip your cap. The ball got rolling, it snowballed out of control, mistakes, like you said, you rattled them all off. That can happen to anybody. It's just unusual when it happens to a team that's normally known for its discipline. And I don't know how again, you can't quantify it. You can't put anything on it. You can't say this call or that decision but if you are a player and you care about your coach and he's dealing with X, how does that, if your relationship status and your finals can affect you, I don't know why, your coach going through something wouldn't affect you too.
Braden Gall is our guest. I figured out the path for K-State to get to the Big 12 championship game, Braden.
Oh, yeah?
You ready for this?
Can it be Kansas State, Texas Tech? Can that happen still?
No, for Kansas State to get there. No, it couldn't be. It couldn't be.
Okay.
So
could it be Kansas State, West Virginia still?
No. So
could it be Kansas State, Baylor?
Nope. No, it can't be that.
All of those teams are still alive, I believe.
I know, but for Kansas State specifically to get there, so they need to win out and be 6-3. They need Arizona State to lose out. They've got BYU and Arizona, possible. They need Colorado to lose out. They've got Kansas this weekend, and then Oklahoma State at home, so that's not happening. So they need Colorado to lose out. They need Baylor to lose to either Houston or KU, and if KU beats Colorado, they'll definitely beat Baylor because then they'll be playing for a bowl game. They need TCU to lose to either Arizona or Cincinnati, and then they need the winner of Texas Tech, West Virginia, to then lose the other game that they play.
Okay, so it can't be Texas Tech or West Virginia.
Yep.
Got it. Okay.
And K-State's in.
Okay.
And then they would be
just that's all.
Yep, they would be BYU would be the team that was in, and they'd be 6-3 Kansas State, 6-3 Iowa State, 6-3 Colorado, and they beat them both. And Kansas State would be going to Dallas. That's all it takes. So
I'm gonna be very honest with you.
Yeah.
I just actually spent this morning writing down all the tiebreakers for every conference, just because I wanted to make sure I did the work.
Right. That's a lot of work, by the way, because I was looking at the SEC and I'm like, good God, good night.
Well, the Big 12 is even more complicated. But you write down BYU, you're like, all right, Arizona State, Houston, all right, Colorado, Kansas, Oklahoma State, okay. Then you get to Arizona State and Iowa State, and I'm not going to lie, I didn't go below those 4. I just stopped at the
right,
2 loss
I get
teams,
it.
and I was
Yeah.
like, I'm not going any further than that.
That makes sense. I wouldn't either because Colorado's going to beat Oklahoma State, so that's a home game. Yeah.
I mean, look, I think the one that could happen is Arizona State could win that game this weekend. The way BYU has played offensively in particular, not just one game, but a couple of games now, like they look very beatable. And so probably should have lost another game, if not, like they should have lost. They should be on a 2-game losing streak right now. And going down to Tempe, like that Arizona State team is playing really well.
Yeah.
So I think Arizona State wins that game. I don't know what the point spread is. I actually don't have it in front of me.
I'll look right now.
I think I would take Arizona State to win that game, which then means you bring Iowa State back into the fold if that happens. So it'll be fun. It's super
Good
fun.
point.
There are 22 power conference teams still alive technically for their conference championship game. That's 9 in the Big 12, 6 in the SEC, 4 in the Big 10, and 3 in the ACC. And there are only 2 games left. I'm sorry, that's fun. That's fun for me.
The Arizona State's a 3-point favorite against BYU.
See, there you go.
So,
there you
go. They are a 3-point favorite. I want to talk about KU. They get the win over BYU that we're talking about. What does this do, and what does this maybe say about Lance Leipold if KU wins these final 2 games and gets to a bowl after being 2-6 at the bye week and looking at Iowa State, BYU, Colorado over their next 3, all top 25 teams to even get to a bowl? What would it say maybe in your mind about Lance Leipold, about this KU team, if they finish off this strong and finish 6-6 and go to a bowl and knock off 3 straight top 25 teams?
That's a tough question to answer because you guys know my stance on Leipold, like that I think very highly of him. I didn't view this season and their struggles out of the gate and this first half of the year as some major indictment on him. I think he's put enough equity in the bank to prove that, look, this is a really good football coach. Like we don't have to go back and retrace his entire career. Like, this guy's won everywhere he's been. And, you're afforded a bad month and a half of football occasionally. Like, that just is sort of life sometimes, especially in a program like Kansas where, you don't get benefits of the doubt in terms of like, oh, I just got more talent. Let's just roll the ball out there and win.
Yeah.
And so, it doesn't change a ton for me in terms of grading him. I'll say this, though. When we did our Athlon show 2 weeks ago and we looked at the next 3 games for Kansas, and we were like, the most important team in the Big 12 is Kansas. They are going to play a role in all of this.
Yeah.
Because, and I think you and I talked about this, when you have a very well-coached team with some talent and some preseason expectations, and then they sort of stumble and trip and then fall, but then kind of find themselves, like, those are really dangerous teams. Utah was in that mix as well, and they almost did the deed against their arch rival and just didn't have anything left in the tank last week against Colorado. So, I mean, it speaks highly of him, but it doesn't change my opinion of what he is and what he's done. It would be a great story, and particularly locally. Is the rest of the country paying attention to whether or not Kansas gets to a bowl game or not? Probably not. But is it meaningful in the Big 12 championship race? Is it meaningful locally to say, look, we fought back, especially at the end of some of those main offensive pieces' careers, to be able to say they got back to a bowl game and go celebrate. Bowl games are not worth a lot in terms of like evaluating how good a team is or is not. But it is a great way to celebrate your roster for your players and your fans, over the Christmas holiday. So it's, I've always viewed like the bowl game is great because it's another chance to tailgate and be with your friends and for players to suit up one more time and, all the cheesy kind of cliche stuff. It's never important, to use the outcome of a bowl game to sort of determine anything looking backward or moving forward. But it is a great thing to celebrate and to sell to recruits and to family members and to players. So it would be a big deal to get to a bowl game for sure. Huge deal.
The line was Colorado by 3. That's now dropped to 2.5. So money coming in on KU there. So that is moving in Kansas' favor.
Where's this one getting played?
This is at Arrowhead. At Arrowhead, yeah. So Dion will get you. He'll be close. He'll be at an NFL stadium, which will preview next year for him. So. Yeah, it'll be just fine for him.
It's not to go off on a tangent, but now I want to because it says that. There is a heated debate in Nashville right now about whether or not Titans ownership would want Shedeur Sanders' circus or not. Because generally NFL teams are very good at keeping their locker rooms isolated from outside nonsense, like a father or a girlfriend or charity event or whatever it might be. So I am skeptical that Deion would be able to do much damage to whatever team his son plays for. But at the same time, like, it's a circus, it's noise. You got to deal with it. Deion's going to be asked about some random AFC South football game when he's coaching at Florida State next year or whatever. And that's going to be weird when he goes off on, Titans ownership. But, like, I find it interesting because the Titans have nothing to draw people's attention right now. And what we know Deion does is, like, and what's ironic about Deion, again, still on this tangent, last year they got way too much coverage relative to how good they were. And this year it almost feels like they're getting undercovered relative to how good they are, which is fascinating to me because if you remember, like, the amount of promotional material that was churning out last summer for that Colorado team, like, it kicked up and it made some noise, and then, like, all of a sudden they lost, like, 4 straight games, and we were like, oh, okay. And this year they're not getting the run that they probably actually deserve. So I think the Titans could use a jolt of attention-seeking, personality, and whether that's the player or the father. So there's a big debate right now about that. And, like, would you want that if you're an NFL owner, or would you not? And you could make good arguments for both sides.
I mean, if you think he's the best quarterback and can turn your franchise around, then I'm taking him.
Yeah.
That's
ultimately that's all that matters.
Yeah.
I think there's questions about that, but ultimately that's all that matters. I think there's a lot of good quarterbacks in this draft, more than people think. I just don't know if any of them are, like, top 5 picks. I think a lot of them are, like, 7 to 20.
Yeah. Braden Gall is our guest, owner of the 440 Sports Podcast Network, ESPN Radio, Athlon Sports. A quick one on Mizzou. They lose to South Carolina. Not a surprise. I thought they would lose. I didn't know Brady Cook was going to play. I thought they would lose and not cover the spread. But Brady Cook ended up playing. They had opportunities. It was could have been a legacy-defining drive with that throw on 4th down to Luther Burden, perfectly placed. Burden with the one-handed catch, and then the defense didn't get the stop, and that's unfortunate. But this Missouri team, like, what do we make of? Like, Eli Drinkwitz has been such a lightning rod over the last 6 months or so with Mizzou, or really the last 3 months, I would say, because, like, last year, how good Missouri was, and being 10-2 and winning a bowl game and being 11-2, and it's like, wow, this team, has an opportunity to win back-to-back games. They got a chance to go to the college football playoff, and then it hasn't been the season that people were hoping for, and there's been some struggles along the way. But this team, the last 2 years, Braden, they are 7-1 in one-score games. So on one side, you go, all right, well, these close games are finding ways to win. On the flip side, you go, yeah, but one of those one-score games were against Mississippi, Middle Tennessee State, Memphis, Vandy, BC. Like, you've got some of these games that it's like, yeah, they're Auburn when they had to make that crazy comeback. So 7-1 in one-score games kind of seems a little misleading when K-State was the big one last year that they got that field goal. Although that field goal was 56 yards, and because they mismanaged the end, it turned into 61. So what do you make of that, like that number, to where this team is going to win 20 games in 2 years, minus the bowl, if they win the next couple, and they win all these one-score games, yet it certainly feels like there's a big failure in the coaching staff?
So that kind of goes back to, like, everything in our conversations turns into, like, black and white, very reductive conversation. It's like, because there's, like, scientific evidence to back up some of the stuff that I'm about to say, which is that generally over time your one-score games are going to kind of regress to the mean. You're going to get to about 50-50 over time. So, I mean, obviously Scott Frost would like a word about that, considering
Nebraska as a program would like a word.
Yeah, it never progressed to the mean there. So generally speaking, like, and so it's different. Like, I think there's an element of, in a moment in a season, you're a team that really plays well in critical situations, and that you can carry that through an entire season. I think that's absolutely something you can do. Now, again, like, 61-yard field goals, 2 scoop and scores. Like, we can also point to some stuff and say, like, that's not a sustainable model either. And so I think it's a little bit of both. Like, it's and what's really weird is as I was listening to your question, I'm sitting there going, like, well, how am I going to judge this Missouri team at the end of the year? You beat Mississippi State like you're supposed to. You get to 8 wins. So I think 18 wins or 19 wins over 2 years before a bowl game is just an excellent 2-year stretch of Missouri football based on fact. But I really think I'm going to end up, I think, defining a lot of the season on the Arkansas game for some strange reason. Like, if you finish that off and you get to 9 wins, you go undefeated at home, what would it be, 6-7-0 at home, you prove that you know how to win close games again. Like, that's not a way to live long term, 3, 4, 5 year window. But is this a quarterback and a collection of guys that just knows how to finish the deal when they're in those clutch, difficult situations? Do they rally around each other? Is that a sign of the coaching staff being pretty good at getting the team to sort of fight in those moments? Like, you could point to all of that and say, yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think over time, it's not a way to live every single week in and week out, and that you're going to have to solve some of those problems. And if you want to look, like, people do this all the time in college football because it's part of the job, but, like, I don't like, and I was just thinking about this with BYU, I hate when teams have great starts to seasons. Like, Pittsburgh's going through this right now. Iowa State, to some degree, is going through this. Like, when you have a great start to a season and then you lose a couple of games, it can unravel quickly, and a lot of folks then end up pointing fingers and saying, like, oh, look, they were terrible, blah, 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 overrated. It's like, or you just had a really great start to the year and you couldn't finish the deal, but you still deserve a lot of credit for what you guys did. And again, I think that's sort of where I think Missouri is at. Like, look, this team wasn't as good as last year's team. We all kind of knew that. We thought their resume was going to be kind of weak. We thought it was a 2 or 3 game schedule. Turns out maybe it was a 4 game schedule with South Carolina. And if you finish 9-3, it's not the same as Kansas, because I don't want to lump those two together without like upsetting both sides of that rivalry. Because Kansas is a quote unquote sort of lesser tier program, but like for Missouri to be at 20 wins or maybe 21 wins over a 2-year period of time, like that is an extraordinary accomplishment. Full stop.
Yep.
Like that, just end of conversation.
It would
then discuss all the nuances.
If they win the next 2 games in a bowl game, if they get to 10 wins, it would be the 3rd time in their school history that they have back-to-back double-digit win seasons, for the 3rd time ever. That's significant.
Was that 06, 07? Is that right?
Yep, and then 13-14 when they won back-to-back East or West East.
And let's have a big
whatever the division was.
At that point. Yeah, right. It was the East.
It was the East because they were in the West.
Playing quarterback, right?
Yeah, you're damn right, James Franklin, one of the more underrated, underappreciated. Yes, underappreciated quarterbacks ever at Mizzou.
I think, and honestly, I think if that were to happen, I think there's a far more interesting conversation about certainly getting to bowl games and 12-game schedule makes it easier for teams to get double-digit wins. But like NC State, for example, is a program that I would say over time has been as good as Missouri, if not slightly better than them. And they have never won 10 games in a single season.
Wow.
And for Missouri to have done back-to-backs 3 times in the last 15 years or 18 years, I think would be a sign of Missouri's maturation into like the modern era of college football. And that is to me, that's like an interesting case study in like all the different people that have made all the different decisions, including a giant move to I mean, Gary Pinkel obviously is a huge factor in all of this, probably the number one character in all of that. Then there's a decision to move to the SEC, which is a huge decision from power brokers and boosters. And so you just kind of start telling the story about Missouri football. And I think it's very interesting to see that all 3 of those situations have happened in the last 15 years under, you would argue, the 2 best coaches in modern Missouri football.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, I think Eli's behind Pinkel, obviously, but, like, isn't he in the conversation?
Yes.
In terms of modern coaches at Mizzou? I think that's interesting to me as an observer.
Braden Gall is our guest. The college football playoff rankings come out tonight. Last one for you. Texas will probably rank number 3, but have the 2 seed. Is there a scenario, Braden, where they knock off Kentucky, A&M knocks off Auburn, and A&M beats Texas at home, and Texas does not make the college football playoff? Because I don't think they would. If chalk holds the next couple of weeks, they wouldn't make the SEC championship game. It'd be A&M versus most likely Alabama.
Probably Bama.
And so, therefore, even if A&M loses, that would be 3 losses for A&M, but they would have beaten Texas, and Texas would have no good win. Their best win would be Vandy. And they'd at that point have 2 losses, and then a head-to-head loss to A&M, and also that head-to-head loss to Georgia as well.
I find it like just on the surface. I don't care what team you're talking about. I don't care what the resume is, the eye test, the metrics. If you tell me that you are the number 3 team in the nation, like you said, as soon as you beat Kentucky, meaning you go into the last week of the regular season, you are 10-1. You're the number 3 team in the country by the committee standards, and you lose a road game to your arch rival that you are playing for the first time in 15 years. who is also ranked probably in the top 12 at that point, if not a little higher.
Right.
And that's the thing that knocks you out of the playoff. Like, so I'm not trying to stand up for Texas. I hate doing that, but like that seems ridiculous to me. So that's number one. And number two, I have been saying that Texas A&M will beat Texas since like March. I have said it. I host the Five Bomb Show a bunch. Every time I do it, I tell everybody A&M will beat Texas. Every podcast I do, every show I do, Texas A&M will beat Texas. And I'm not sure I'm changing my opinion 2 weeks out. So do I think A&M would make for the best SEC championship game? It might actually make for a really fun one, depending on who they play. But I don't know what to tell you if that happens.
Yeah.
I think Texas belongs in, especially when you look at, like, I mean, Ole Miss has one better win, but are their losses worse? Yeah. So, like, I don't know. I don't know what the committee does there. It just feels insane to drop the team from 3 to 12 at minimum because of a road loss against an arch rival who's also a top 12 team. That seems silly to me.
I'm with you, but at that point you're like, all right, let's examine what we're doing here. So do you punish A&M for losing an extra game by playing in the SEC championship game and having to play Alabama for their third loss? You shouldn't. No. So then A&M would have, wins, against Texas. And so that would be the head-to-head with the one extra loss. They also played.
Well, no one. All right, I'll stop you right there.
But then also Georgia beat Texas.
You could go on for an hour.
I know.
Hang on, I'm going to stop you right there. This is ultimately what nobody wants to hear, and I hate doing it because it makes me sound like an SEC homer.
Here we go.
It makes me sound like I'm on the take. But like, let's be honest. Texas is better than SMU. They are better than Miami. They are better than probably Indiana, Notre Dame, and BYU.
Agreed.
Like Notre Dame has one good win this year. I mean, like, so I don't mean to be that homer who just sort of, again, reduces it all down to something. But there are 5 or 6 SEC teams that are worthy of being in this top 12. And I'm sorry, that just is what it is.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying. That's my opinion. You can disagree with me, but like, there's nobody in the Big 12 that would have, like, you look at Georgia's schedule. There is nobody in the Big 12 or the ACC or any Group of 5 conference, and maybe 1 or 2 teams in the Big 10, Oregon and maybe Ohio State, that would have a 2-loss record with Georgia's schedule. There's just not. Now, you're talking Texas, easier schedule. I get it. But, like, at some point it feels awfully dumb to be like, well, but this 2-loss BYU team that didn't have a win over anybody but, like, SMU, that they probably deserve to be in over a 2-loss Texas. And I'm just like, okay, at some point I love Cinderella, but, like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
You know?
I think if we could be talking about if Texas gets in, like, they might be the 4th selection out of the SEC if that happens, because you would take the conference champion, if in this scenario Alabama, A&M with 3 losses would have the head-to-head and a better schedule. Georgia would have beaten them head-to-head and also beat Tennessee with the same schedule or same record. But I'm in agreement with you on those. If we're just simply looking at games and saying, are we trying to find the most deserving resume-wise, or are we trying to find the best teams? Well, if we're trying to find the most deserving resume-wise, well, then how is Texas up there at number 3? Because resume doesn't say that, but also but you're saying they're the best.
What's Penn State's best win right now today? What's Indiana's best win right now?
Right.
Today?
Yeah, it's the same argument.
Okay, so like the only thing I'll disagree with you on is I think the resume and how good you think a team are they're tied together. Yeah. But just because you don't play a tough schedule doesn't mean you're not a great team. Like, I don't disagree. That's where I'm saying, like, right. But that's where I'm saying, like, are they saying the resume and that's what gets you in, or are they saying, no, we think these are the 12 best teams, the 5 automatic qualifiers, and we think these next 7 are the best teams in America that we have seen and watched and can go and win a national championship. And if you want to argue that Texas didn't play anybody over Indiana's 1 loss, whatever, that's fine. Go pound sand. This is the team that's in the college football playoff. Well, and I don't like it, but I think it's being fair if I say, look, I think Penn State's clearly one of the 10 or 12 best teams in America, but they don't have a good win on their schedule. Yeah. And I'm going to say, if I can say that about Texas, I'll say the same thing about Penn State. Mm-hmm. Again, Indiana and BYU 2 weeks ago, BYU proved it kind of right. But like Indiana's one of their best wins, opponent-wise, was Michigan, and it was like one of their worst performances of the season. Same with BYU. One of their toughest wins of the year was on the road against Utah, and it was an ugly game where they played terrible offensive football. So against a 500 team. And again, I feel like a crazy person who's like trying to just talk up one league, but like my opinion is my opinion. If you have 7 at-large spots, like, do I want 5 of them to go to SEC teams? Probably not. I don't think that's good for the game. But do I believe in my heart of hearts that probably 4 of those spots should go to SEC teams along with the automatic? I mean, probably. Like, you're telling me Bama, Georgia, Ole Miss, Tennessee are not among the 10 best teams in America? Like, I find it hard to make the argument against that, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Braden Gall, you're the man. Appreciate it as always. ESPN Radio, Athlon Sports, 440 Sports Podcast Network. Appreciate it, brother. We kept you way too long, but was loving the conversation. Yeah. Enjoy the football, man. We'll talk next week. It'll only get crazier.
Yeah, boys.
Absolutely. Yep. Braden Gall joining us. Great stuff from him, as always. Look, the next couple of weeks, it could all work itself out. You know, it's like, well, we got these 7 starters in spring training. Who's going to be the starting 5? Well, it'll probably work itself out, you know, through spring training and injuries and attrition and things like that. You know, teams will win, lose, all this stuff, you know, and draw.
What I will say.
Say it.
We are all talking about, you know, 12 and 10 through 14 and all this stuff. Way better we're talking about these teams than the 5th, 6th team, or in the BCS, the 3rd or 4th team. This is still way more fair. I understand people who are going to be upset. And you might even have a case. At some point, though, we expanded this. You had your opportunity. You could have done things differently. You could have not lost to whoever you lost to. We're no longer talking about 0 or 1 loss teams. We are talking now about 2 lost teams.
Yeah, win more
you
games.
had a chance.
Win more games. All right, we'll take a timeout. We'll come back, continue rolling. I do want to talk some baseball on the other side. The Royals moved up a spot in the draft last night.
Ooh.
It was a connection there by proxy. I'll explain that on the other side of the break. And then, does Matt Quatraro get the appreciation and the love that he deserves tonight with the Major League Baseball awards and Manager of the Year being handed out? We'll talk about that on the other side of the break, and maybe Brady Singer on his way out. More Zone next.
still had a 3.5 ERA. It's not like that. It's not like he was he was good.
Yeah. And then tonight, Manager of the Year comes down to Matt Quattrero, AJ Hinch, and Stephen Vogt. So if you're in the American League Central, you're going to have the Manager of the Year. It's expected that in the National League, it'll be Milwaukee. Yeah. Matt Quattrero better win tonight. Because if Quattrero does not win, that would mean that neither J.J. Piccolo nor Matt Quattrero would win their particular awards for their positions. J.J. Piccolo did not win Executive of the Year for some odd reason, because the other GMs are dumb. He finished second. So out of the 30 Major League Baseball GMs to vote for the other GMs, you can't vote for yourself. Although if I was JJ, I would have voted for somebody that had no chance of getting it. Chris Getz.
Chris Getz.
I ain't voting for the guy that I might lose to. Chris Getz.
Everyone does that, and so Chris Getz. Wow, Chris Getz got a lot of votes, huh?
Chris Getz, how did he win exactly? All right, we got to do this over. Guys, stop throwing off, okay? This is, don't sandbag over here, all right? Just tell me how many books you got. Milwaukee's GM, that I forget his name right now, he ended up winning Executive of the Year. And if Quattrero misses out on Manager of the Year, that would mean the team that improved by 30 wins went from 106 losses to making the divisional round and being tied one apiece with the Yanks. Would not have a manager or an Executive of the Year. And by the way, that Executive of the Year, signing Bobby Witt Jr. to a long-term deal, getting Lugo and Waka, having to rebuild your bullpen, and I don't know, losing your number 3 hitter for the final 2 months of the season and having to piece that together just to make the postseason. That's the Executive of the Year. While the manager was also having to deal with that throughout the season of the bullpen and the guys that weren't performing well, and then figuring out who's going to fill in when Vinny goes down. He's expected to win. He's the favorite to win. A lot of these, straw polls that they do with different, MLB.com or ESPN has Quattrero winning. But it would be unnecessarily annoying for me if Quattrero did not win and then J.J. Piccolo also didn't win Executive of the Year. One of them should deserve one of those awards because of what the Royals did this offseason from where they were last year.
Did you say J.J. got second?
He finished second.
Yeah, which again is, Milwaukee was great. They
went from 92 wins last year to 93.
No, I know, but they also they got rid of Corbin Burns was not, and so
sure.
I at least
they had to deal with their closer having a back injury,
and then Josh Hader's obviously that's been 2 years, a year and a half now, but still.
Now they were projected to win 80, and they got to 93, so they improved on their projection, but they did go from 92 wins to 93.
Yeah, and again, I'm just trying to play devil's advocate because we're close.
Totally. And I'm not saying he didn't deserve consideration for Executive of the Year.
Sure.
I just think a guy that signs Bobby Witt Jr. to a long-term deal and gets those pitchers to sign on to the Royals that lost 106 games.
Yeah, Waka, Lugo. Just all those.
And then overcoming Vinny by finding Tommy Pham, by finding Gurriel.
Yeah.
It
almost feels like he is more deserving than even of again, more than Q. If I was going to go one way, I would say almost Piccolo versus Q.
Getting a closer for, much less money and draft or a trade.
Yeah.
Almost stealing, Urseg, it felt like, from the A's when you saw how much Tanner Scott went for. It's like, okay, this is like highway robbery right here. He should have won Executive of the Year. And if he didn't, well, then you're saying that Matt Quattrero was piecing that thing together as the manager to go and win 30 more games this year.
And if he didn't, then Bobby Witt Jr. should have been him.
Damn it, something. Why are they finishing second? Second Executive of the Year, second in MVP, which is tomorrow, and then second in Manager of the Year? Get out of here with that.
Always the bridesmaid, never the bride.
Marsha. More so next. Doug Peterson saying that Gabe Davis is now out for the year, so for fantasy football purposes, not necessarily for a Jags winning or losing purposes, but also for, good God, that contract is so bad purposes. I didn't realize this about Gabe Davis. So he's like $4 million against the cap this year. He's like $7 million against the cap next year. Then $17 million against the cap in his final year. Oof. And then they added a void year when he's not even playing, and it's a $10.4 million cap hit. Woof. second segment here.
Fact.
Fiction.
No, you hear that? It's a fact.
Or maybe it's fiction.
Maybe
I
it
have
is.
it
We'll have
done.
to find out.
Or maybe we'll just not do it.
Yeah.
No,
Maybe
fiction.
we'll just-
We're doing it. I did this.
Maybe we'll take the time that you spent to finish this, and then we will just skip it, and we won't do it.
I'll use the same questions that might not even be pertinent next week then.
And we got to go back and
We'll roll it
recheck.
over.
I said I was going to do that. I was going to recheck. I didn't do all that.
We didn't. No, we
Gotcha.
didn't.
I got my coffee last week.
Hey, you know who also got Mick his coffee yesterday? This guy.
I heard that Bethany got that coffee.
Well, I paid for it.
That's
Yeah.
exactly
and I
right.
bought her a coffee for it. So it ended up being
she profited on this.
she
Yeah.
profited on it for sure, but I'm a nice guy. And I wanted to make sure Mick got hot coffee.
Hot coffee.
He got a hot coffee. He's like, yeah, I'll heat it in the microwave afterwards. It's going to be here 4.5 hours early. The milk's going to curdle.
Well, nobody should have milk in their coffee.
Well, I'm a black coffee man myself.
No, Mick is Mick. I understand.
He didn't think through the bet.
No.
So he said 7-1 coffees for Blue Valley North winning when they were heavy underdogs.
Yeah.
That Mick would have to give him 7 coffees if North won. If they
21
lost,
nothing at halftime.
yeah, he'd have to give the 1 coffee to Mick, but he didn't think it through in the fact that by getting that 1 coffee, somebody would go and pick it up, and then he would actually get himself a coffee. So that ended up being 7-3.
It was 7-3, and then I got you that 1 coffee, so that's 4 now. But
I almost would have wanted to see Blue Valley win because Mick would have brought you 7 coffees at once.
That would have been great.
I promise you, that's how
That would've
Mick
been great.
does.
That would have been awesome.
Yeah.
That would have been fantastic.
And you'd be like, well, no.
here are your coffees.
Here's your coffees.
I wouldn't have
You didn't
complained.
specify one day at a time.
I would have loved it. I
It
would
would
have.
It would have been great content, and your team would have won.
Yeah, it'd have been a
They
win-win.
were not close. I was there.
it was not a
But
close
one
game.
of these 7-1 bets, they're gonna hit.
Hey, they got to hit.
They're gonna
It's
hit.
like you're playing your parlays, man.
Exactly.
Yes,
They always-
if you
yes.
keep throwing chances at it, one's gonna hit, and then I'm
Then you're set.
then who has the coffees?
You.
Yeah.
This
Plus-
man.
plus 700
Dylan, let's
parlays
bet.
hit all the time.
Let's bet on something. What do you want to bet on?
Anything right now. What do you got?
He's shaking his head.
I don't know. I
Give
just
me-
got
give
put
me
on
a
the
thought.
spot. Yeah, give me a second.
Did you see
Sixers win tonight.
No, how about this? 7-1. Mississippi Valley State beats KU. 7-1. Dylan gets 1
K-State.
coffee. Oh yeah, K-State. That's right. K-State.
If they beat KU.
Okay.
Okay, no. That would have to
All
be
right,
like
so,
10,000
you know
to
what?
1.
We got Wilmington
Even
tonight.
more. UNC Wilmington. UNC Wilmington beats KU. If that happens, you get 7 coffees. If KU wins, Dylan
I
gets
get
1.
10,000 coffees.
No. You said 7-1.
Okay, how about this? 7-1 if the hopeless 76ers beat the Memphis
we're not
Grizzlies
doing-
no,
tomorrow.
we
I'm
don't
not
know-
betting
we
on
don't know
regular.
NBA.
I'm
We don't
not
know
betting
enough
on
about
regular
that.
season NBA.
They've
we're
won
not
2
doing it.
games.
Oh wow, cool. Good for them.
Sixers are cheeks, dude.
Yeah,
Hey,
well,
Listen, Wilmington's won some games.
that's right.
Well, good thing to have Joel Embiid for like the back
Mississippi
half of the
Valley has
season.
actually won a
so,
game too, by the way.
You
so.
know, when the games
Well, they beat,
doesn't matter.
Mississippi
women
School for the women.
For the women. We went through this last year.
Yes, we
that
did.
That was the school for white girls in 1884.
It was, and now it's the school for women. And Mississippi Valley is making their road trip.
They've got 2 more Big 12 games, I think. I think they're playing
BYU.
Utah and somebody.
Yeah, they play BYU. I think they've got Utah.
I think like Texas too. What's wild is they play in the SWAC and might have the hardest strength of schedule of any team in college
tough month.
basketball.
They don't play another home game until January 11th, I think.
These checks can't be that good either.
Good
I mean,
enough
it's
to keep doing
something.
this, man.
I mean, how many people were at Mizzou Arena last week for that?
Too many, probably.
I don't know.
KU is favored by 24.5. UNC Wilmington is plus 1,800. So 18 coffees to 1.
18-1. Will you do it?
That's
What's
a
the
bad
spread?
deal.
24.5.
You don't have to worry about it. This is money line.
It's just money line.
I'm not
No,
doing,
I know.
I ain't doing no money line here.
Yeah.
You're not going to give Dylan a coffee.
18 to 1?
No, I would need at least 50 to 1.
What?
Coffees.
That's
Well,
not
what-
the line is
what's-
18 is not 50.
What's the Valley
All right.
in K-State?
Let me see what Mississippi Valley State K-State
That's
is.
close.
No, I saw them
Well,
play.
there is,
if Missouri can beat you by 72,
there's no-
I ain't touching that.
The money line is locked.
Okay.
39.5.
But here's the deal. K-State lost a game already.
Oh, that's a good point.
Missouri was undefeated.
That's a great point. No, they
No,
weren't because they
Missouri
lost
lost to Memphis
to start off
the
the season.
start-
Oh,
of
I
the
was during the
season.
Chiefs game. They were up at halftime, though.
They were. Yes, they were up by like 13 at some point.
And
yeah.
typical Mizzou fashion, they love to choke.
I thought they were good.
I thought they were going to lose that game, but I thought they wouldn't.
Wouldn't be
you
up
know,
by 13.
Yeah, I didn't think that was going to happen either.
Go different.
So 39.5 or
You won't make
24.5.
this bet.
Fiction.
You won't make the bet. Fiction? Okay, great. So facts. So make the bet. Which one is it?
We could also save it for KU Duke.
Next week?
You know, Sterling is scared. He can get
You're
to
going to
church
go
in
7-1
time.
on
and-
KU Duke?
I'll think about it.
Okay.
I'll think about it.
File that away.
File it.
I don't think
How about-
Dylan
well,
should go
what's-
7-1 on KU.
How about
Duke.
just the Panthers? Chiefs.
Oh, I'm not going 7-1 on that game.
Yeah, I was going to say Dylan
No,
would
no,
go
no, that's
7-1
1
on
for
KU.
one.
Duke.
That could be a 3-1.
I mean, what about the Panthers?
3-1.
That ought to
What are
be
you
about
talking
like
about?
that, right? A 10-point, 11-point thing. That's got to be something like 7-1.
If the Panthers
I bet
win,
that's
you
like
mean?
250. I bet that's like 250.
Yeah, but it's not worth it. We're not doing that way. We're doing the Sterling Holmes betting method
So,
where we
but
bet
where you
coffees.
haven't come
Oh
close
no, you're
to
right.
any of these.
I was way off on that. It's 650. So there you go. 7-1.
7-1.
Chiefs, Panthers.
I don't want to take the Panthers.
Well, the Chiefs are minus 650. The Panthers are plus 470. Whatever.
but that's the VIG,
Yeah, I
and
know,
no one's
right.
getting the VIG in this situation.
Well, you
Lebo
know,
might.
That's the.
Bethany got the VIG.
Yeah,
She got
I
free coffee and some
he
money.
did get the VIG.
She made the trip.
That was a big
House
profit
gets
she
paid.
got too.
House
did.
gets paid.
She doubled the
got
profit.
equal.
yeah.
She got equal profit to you guys.
Yeah.
That
She's
is
the house.
The house is winning really well.
She won.
House
So
only-
you will do this Panthers bet?
No
5-1. 5 coffees to 1.
7.
That's what we started at, 7-1.
Seven-
Why,
7-1.
then why would you move down? Why wouldn't you move up?
I was trying to make it easier. She only had to give up 5. Oh, you get 5.
Yeah,
10-1.
10-1. You and me.
No, Dylan.
Dylan.
You wanted to bet me. So.
10-1 odds.
Yeah.
10 coffees to 1. Chiefs win.
Sterling is picking the Panthers to win.
I want the Chiefs. Chiefs are gonna win, but 10-1 odds are pretty good odds. All right, 10-1.
Are you in,
You
Dylan?
on?
Yeah, I'm in.
All right.
Let's go.
Now, you need to specify you don't want your 10 coffees at once.
No, we already agreed. We already
The
agreed.
fine print is he
Yep.
can be
The
dispersed.
Chiefs
in
are
any
gonna
fashion.
win. Basically, I'm just donating because I think Dylan's a nice guy.
Yes.
You know what you get,
thank
Dylan?
you.
Is you get a one of those big ass
Yes.
drinks.
If you didn't think I was ordering the Quick Trip Growler,
yeah,
of course.
and then you put the 10 coffees in there, and here you go. Here's your 10
Yup.
coffees in one. Sterling's going to be climbing on the wall.
They have. Did
You'll
you
have to
see
deal
the
with
thing
me.
last night? Someone had retweeted it. It was like from Hard Rock Casino or something. Someone had teased the Texans to a 4.5-point dog and bet $1 million to win $100,000.
Oh.
I mean, I guess it's fine,
If you got
but
$1 million to bet, then
but
you
they
could-
won by 24 points.
I would ask if it's Mattress Mac, but he didn't make a spectacle out of it and tell everybody before he bet, so it wasn't
Okay.
him.
Probably right.
He's our
Well,
good friend. You
I-
talked to him.
I talked to him.
I guess
Talked
if
to
you have
Mattress
that
Mac.
much money, you just made $100K.
Yeah, I mean, you bet 10% on your money. I guess that's good.
That's
but
risky as hell, though. Like, because if you miss that, then you have to get 10 more of those bets right
yes.
to get back your initial.
There was really no thought that
Kinda
they
like
were
all
going to
your-
lose by 5 points.
Kind
at
of
any
like you're,
point in the game.
kind of like you're going to be down 3 coffees now. So
Yeah.
you keep losing these coffees.
You'll
you're
be
gonna
down
have to-
4 coffees now because I got Bethany one. So
That's right.
if you forget about the
That's
house,
just part of the cost of doing business.
that's just
though.
that's the cost of doing. But Dylan's fine because we can get it in the morning. I don't have. I'm thoughtful. I could have got Mick the coffee.
By the way,
at
did
9.
you specify that this coffee comes from outside here? He's not going to just walk down here and pour you a cup of coffee.
No, we don't do
No,
that.
we didn't. We
No,
didn't specify
Dylan,
that either.
Dylan, we know we don't do that. We're honest men.
Right, of course.
I'm an honest man.
These are outside coffees.
It's like a quick trip.
When he-
Honestly, I
when
was
he
There's
paid
no
my
way
coffee-
I'd save the Quick Trip cup from yesterday and reuse
Never.
it. There's no
would
way.
do it.
no, because I could taste that.
I made a mistake that when he brought me my coffee, I had already had like a cup and a half of
Oh,
coffee
no.
here. I didn't really need it all, but it was good.
I was an honest man.
You were. So you got one for us this week?
I'm gonna lose my house with all these bets, but it's gonna be worth it. All these
That's all
coffee
fine.
bets.
I love how people are like, I already had one today. I shouldn't have another, and I have like 4
Yes.
before the first hour.
yeah, but you get
ends.
those little cups.
Dylan's
these
4
little
in
Dixie
before
cups.
11 o'clock.
Yeah, 1.5 is before the show starts.
Yes.
Todd, so.
Those little cups are supposed to make people drink less coffee. Is it working?
No, actually.
Todd Lebo is hanging out with us here. Let's start with some NFL football here with Todd. The concerns moving forward, if there are, who knows? There may not be concerns for you moving forward. I know they didn't put pressure on Josh Allen. The second cornerback is an issue. Offensively, though, they have had their struggles. The protection for Patrick Mahomes or pressure on the opposing quarterback moving forward? What's a bigger issue for you?
I would lean towards pressure on the other quarterback because I think Patrick Mahomes handles the pressure pretty well. He got sacked a couple times last time, but he got out of the pocket. He does things. I didn't think this wasn't awful. This wasn't as bad as Kingsley Suamataia whiffing, 5 times or whatever against the Broncos. But I have been concerned that Josh Allen is hard to sack. You get back there, you barely get a hand on him. He gets away. He's big and strong. But I think that Charles Omenihu back will help, whether that's this Sunday or they wait till next Sunday. That's like getting one of your big free agent signings a couple years ago just back in November. So that would be a big deal. And it was curious that Uche didn't play as many snaps the other day, but they know what they're doing. I'm not going to sit there and question too much of what Steve Spagnuolo is doing. I mean, Joshua Williams didn't get any snaps at cornerback, so they were throwing, Najee Johnson to the fire. So I think that getting pressure on the opposing quarterback right now is a bigger concern to me than the Chiefs' tackle play, I think. And by a hair, not by a lot.
Well, with Josh Allen, like it's a little more difficult. I've been given a little bit of a benefit of the doubt to the Chiefs, and they're like you need a sack. Okay, so you need to get the quarterback down. Just pressuring every single down.
They did a really nice job against Bo Nix because he's pretty elusive.
Yeah,
they had those 2 really long sacks where Bolton got him and Najee got him. Right, that's good work by those guys to get back there and not let him get away and just dump the ball off. They could not get that done against.
Yeah, they had one where it was like a free rush, and that was Trent McDuffie, who was stiff-armed, face mask stiff-armed, but still,
whatever.
Josh Allen's a bigger dude, so he was holding him off at arm's length and got to throw it away, which was intentional grounding, but it was third down anyway. Who cares? They were punting, whatever. There weren't many of those where somebody just seemed like they came free, and so I'll give a little bit of a benefit of the doubt to where the front four rushing against Josh Allen may be a little more different than rushing against Gardner Minshew or
Bryce Young,
maybe even Bryce Young, because if you break contain on your rush, like Turk Wharton won quickly over the against the Bills, and Josh Allen just tucked it, went right where that gap opened up and picked up 9 yards on 2nd and 10.
He's playing very well,
and then got right back up there and quarterback sneak, and that was because Turk Wharton got pressure immediately, did what he was supposed to do, but kind of didn't do what he was supposed to do, because by going around the guy and beating him, Josh Allen's pretty good. And the same thing with that 4th down and 2 run. I mean, we talked about it and listened to Josh Allen post game on Sunday, and coming in talking about it, that Josh Allen said, the play we had was a man beater, and they showed man. I could have checked out of it, but it was the defense we were looking for, because they play man to man on 3rd and 4th down. And he said, I snapped it, and it was going to be an easy little out to the receiver because they were in man, except they switched to zone. And he said, and as soon as I saw him switch to zone, I thought, uh-oh, like I'm bleeped, because this play is not going to work. So you know what he did? He tucked it and ran.
He only needed 2 yards, but he got 26.
But he made a play. Like Mahomes does it all the time.
Yes.
Yeah.
The perfect defense to beat that play, Mahomes then finds a way to beat you. It was the perfect defense by Spags. They went against their tendency. The Bills counted on their tendency. Josh Allen saw the Chiefs' tendency, and then Spags said,
the wild card.
Gotcha, and flipped it on him. And another quarterback that couldn't run, it's 4th down, and they don't complete that pass, or they get sacked. But
or
Allen,
someone else who doesn't believe in his legs may sit there and try to go beat it and end up throwing a bad pass or
somebody
something
doesn't
like
see
that.
immediately that they switch to zone when he starts to drop
They'd
back.
do the wrong route or whatever. He is playing great.
Yeah,
he is playing MVP level quarterback. There's no real shame in that. I mean, he didn't kill him, but he had a nice enough day, and the Chiefs turned the ball over in the first drive of the game, and they defense played well. Got the ball back to them a couple times beginning of the second half, and the Chiefs couldn't do anything on offensively. So these things just happen.
Yeah.
But if the whole outside world complains about the Chiefs easily could have lost either of their first 2 games.
Thank God they blocked that field goal, because if we're talking about the 1 seed, that blocked field goal is
And then
huge.
they what if Tampa goes for 2?
Yeah, right.
What if the field goal doesn't get blocked? I mean, there's lots of those.
Likely's
things.
foot is a little bit smaller.
Yeah.
There's a ton of those things along the way, and it's what I said last week after they beat the Broncos, in that something's going to change. Either the Chiefs will win by more points, or they will lose one of these close games. Like it's that one of
and this one didn't
will
end up
change.
being close because
but it was closer than the
closer
9 points
because you had the ball back ready to go down. There's
you were down by 2 with 6 minutes to go, and your defense out there, get one stop, you get the ball back, or hold them to a field goal, you still get the ball back.
It looked like they got the stop.
Yeah.
I mean, they got the 3rd down stop.
Yeah.
You have to credit McDermott for understanding that he's not playing against Gardner Minshew or whatever. He's playing against Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. You better go try to win the game.
Well, who would you rather? Like, you put the ball in the hands of Josh Allen. If you're Sean McDermott, here's my choice. I go for it on 4th and 2, and I put the ball in the hands of my quarterback, Josh Allen. Or I kick a field goal and I put the ball in the hands of Patrick Mahomes and their quarterback.
Do you trust Josh to get 2 yards?
I'll take my superstar quarterback.
Do you trust Josh to get 2 yards is what it comes down to.
I'll take my superstar quarterback rather than giving the ball to their superstar quarterback
and
and
even
letting
if it
him
stopped, the Chiefs still have to go move the ball 25 yards, 30 yards to do something.
It's an easy decision.
It's
because, by the way, every Chiefs fan wanted them to kick the field goal.
Oh,
100%.
absolutely.
It's basically saying, do you want to try and win the game, or do you want to lose by 2 points? like, do you want it to look good and lose by 2?
Exactly. Yeah, because the Chiefs had just gone down and scored, and they'd had some possessions where they looked good going and driving. And Patrick talked about after the game was over about having that sense of urgency throughout the game rather than just that final drive when they were down 9, the second to last drive when they were down 9, and they scored the touchdown and got it within 2.
Listen, the Chiefs they didn't need to go undefeated, okay?
Yeah.
But if you're going to choose a game to lose, I'd rather not win that one.
Yeah. For sure.
In the overall scheme of things.
The Panthers game probably would have been the good one.
Because then you could have won the coffee.
Because I would have got the coffees.
And it wouldn't have been no big deal.
Yeah, and they would have ended the whole undefeated talk or whatever, and then they could rest players at the end if they needed to. My concern with the pass protection is not only just like, okay, Mahomes and feeling the pressure and getting sacked and ending drives. It's also like, watching the All-22 last night, and so we know about the play down the field to Xavier Worthy in which he stepped out of bounds. We know that Mahomes could have made a better throw. There wasn't any pressure there. He leaned on his back foot and threw it, whatever. It's still 80-20 Xavier Worthy's fault. Catch the ball.
At least.
At minimum, that should be a catch in the National Football League. But there were also 2 other plays that was schemed that Xavier Worthy was popping wide open for long gains. But the pressure got there. And Mahomes, there was one where Worthy was, Travis Kelce ran like 15 yards and stopped, and he pulled one of the safeties. Worthy ran right behind him, and the other safety was like 20 yards further down the field, and Worthy was running a corner route and nobody there.
But there's no time.
Wanya Morris got beat on that particular play, and then Mahomes spun away, and then somebody else sacked him.
Then the window's gone.
Yeah, and the second play of the game, I said yesterday that one of my issues was not that Mahomes threw the ball while being tackled because he puts on a cape and you live and die with those things. My issue was Travis Kelce comes wide open for a 4-yard gain and a first down and runs a slant and stops right there, and Mahomes looks right at him and doesn't throw it. And when I watch the All-22, which I love, having the opportunity to do that, I have a little different view on that because when Mahomes does that, early in the game, I think Mahomes trusts his protection. As it breaks down, he loses trust in his protection. That first passing play, second play of the game, he sat there trusting his protection. He looked at Kelce. 3 guys ran to Kelce. Right behind him, Noah Gray was getting ready to pop open for like 20 yards.
He had to move.
And if he had another half second, he hits Noah Gray. But Trey Smith got walked back right into Patrick Mahomes. Jawan Taylor got beat to the inside. So Mahomes didn't have time to do that, so he had to step up and then try to throw it to Noah Gray. I understand why he looked at Kelce first.
Yeah.
Because that drew the defense there. And he's trusting his protection is going to give him another half second to throw the ball to a guy who's springing wide open.
And bad start to the game on that, because that affects you for the whole game.
Yes. And so, 1, you got pressure, so now you're maybe not trusting it. 2, it's a turnover. 3, it's not a 25-yard gain that immediately puts you into Baltimore territory or Buffalo territory on the second play of the game.
Your possession.
Lost your possession.
Because you get the ball first.
Yeah.
So then now, the way it turned out, the Bills end up scoring.
Yeah.
They scored there. Then they got the ball twice in the middle of the game. They had knelt on the ball, whatever, at the end. So the Chiefs didn't get the number of possessions and all got jacked up on the second play of the game.
That's my concern about the protection is Andy Reid scheming some things open for Xavier Worthy, too, for these big chunk plays. But if you don't have time to throw it and Mahomes doesn't trust that it's going to be there, then what's the point,
Yeah, and on a weekly basis, the teams you play aren't going to have the fronts that the last 2 teams you play
For sure.
have. But in January, they are.
Yeah,
they
sure.
all
Yep.
are.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to play some team in January that can't get after the quarterback.
Yep.
So those are the games that matter.
Yeah.
If they can
And
get that
so
done then.
I
And
feel
will they – we're sitting here in the middle of November. Are they going to win the Super Bowl? I don't know. If they're the 1 seed, I don't know if they win the Super Bowl. It's hard to do that.
Yes. I mean, we saw
they've won 3 of them, but
yeah.
they also lost the Super Bowl, and they've lost playoff games. It's hard to just think they're going to win all the games. I know they've won a lot of games, but – you just can't sit there and say, oh, yeah, sure, absolutely going to three-peat. This is mentally wearing on them. There's lots of things going on. They got guys, houses getting broke into. I mean, there's things going down. in the world right now. There's a lot of things afoot, but they've always done a great job of being focused, ready to go, get all their work done, and go win games. But you just can't win them all.
Last one, and then we'll get to Fact or Fiction. This is not NFL football. It's a quick topic change, but it came up yesterday. Chris Kleiman was asked in his press conference, are you thinking about retiring? He outright dismissed it and I don't even know where that got started. No, I'm not going anywhere. I think there was connecting of the dots. I think people were looking at it and seeing the dizzy spell against KU.
A couple weeks ago, yeah.
Everything going on behind the scenes with his family and that taking a toll on him and maybe taking a toll on the team. They came out pretty unfocused after the bye week, and it's not an excuse or blame or anything. It's just reality. If your coach who you love is going through something pretty emotional and is struggling and everybody's sort of wrapping their arms around him metaphorically and his wife, you might have some thoughts elsewhere. But he comes out and immediately says, I'm not retiring.
Yeah.
It was odd to see K-State play this way the last couple of weeks, and especially against Arizona State when they came out as unfocused as they did. I don't think it's crazy to think that, an unfortunate circumstance of what's happening with his family behind the scenes and how it's affecting the program could have had at least 2%, 3%. These kids are human, and they see somebody that they love who's struggling.
Well, there's also people are just put together different, okay? Yeah. Some people can just compartmentalize and do whatever, and for the most part, coaches do that.
Yeah.
But I don't know all the details of everything that's going on, and every one of these, especially in college, now in college, is even harder because kids, they could have their eye somewhere right now.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Because it's that time of year. We're not going to make the title game. We're talking about the playoff, but maybe I'll go
Girl
somewhere
problems.
else and this, and whatever.
Yeah.
NIL problems,
right?
Transfer portal problems, girl problems, and all of those things. I think it's harder now to coach college football than it's been because you are working on through all of this stuff that you used to just go. Right now, you'd be recruiting some high school kids because early signing day's coming. You're getting ready. You want to go to a bowl game. You want to do all these things. But now you're re-recruiting your team every day. You're preparing for teams you've never played. This year in the Big 12 especially, you got really in the last 2 years, you're adding all these new teams. It's just a harder job than it's been before. And you're used to a certain standard of stuff, and things aren't going well. It can get a little weird. But, yeah, it was really emotional after the game, obviously. And then he was dizzy a couple weeks ago, and then everyone starts freaking out because they see a clip. Oh, it's this, it's that, it's whatever. I mean, you don't know what's going on in people's lives.
Right.
We sit here and talk to each other around here. We don't really know what's going on in everyone's lives. It's hard to tell what's going on unless you ask them, and they tell you honestly.
Yeah, and they
give
you an honest opinion.
You can ask them what's going on. Nah, nothing. I'm all right.
How you doing today?
Don't know.
Doing good, man.
Yeah.
Man, but great day. Really? Because, what really happened this morning at the house is not really a great day. So, you don't know.
It's not been a good year for K-State for what they thought, or for Kansas or Missouri for that matter, for what we kind of thought it was going to end up being. Now, Kansas has things going right now, and if they end up making 6 wins, this will be like a season they talk about.
The K-State and Mizzou can end up 9-3. Kansas with 6 wins, and somehow Kansas feeling better.
Yeah, absolutely.
To a degree,
because that's how the Vegas totals were and all that. So it'll be something to see how they played this week. Yeah, the Big 12's coming right down to it. No one can win it this week. You can't get in the title game this week unless 3 things happen. No one can just win and in. The scenarios are weird. I heard you going through some of those for them earlier. But listen, Arizona State beats BYU. This whole thing's going to get crazy.
Yeah, it's going to get nutty.
And I think it can absolutely happen.
KU beating Colorado, and all of a sudden we're getting into some screwy tie-breaking scenarios with
all
like
kinds
7 or
of
8 teams that are.
And as I said, I promise you, I said this on the air here probably 2 months ago. I did not think that there was a chance that in the Big or the SEC that there would be any undefeated teams. And right now, it's guaranteed that someone's going to be in that title game with 2 losses.
With 2 losses at least.
Guaranteed.
Yep.
Because Texas and Texas A&M play each other.
Yep.
It's wild, man.
And Texas A&M are going to win that one. Texas is not going to make the college football playoff.
God, let's hope.
All right, we'll take a timeout. We'll come back. Fact or fiction? Does Texas make the college football playoff? Oh, maybe that's part of it. I don't know. Hopefully it's fact. I don't know. We'll find out. More's on next. Jason Anderson, Sterling Holmes, Dylan Michaels, Todd Lebo. Let's get into some fact or fiction here on this Tuesday edition of The Zone. I don't know why I say Thursday, but I wish it was Thursday. Hump Day already. We're already past Hump Day, everybody.
Happy Thanksgiving.
It starts with a Tuesday.
Tuesday.
Yes,
It's
that's right.
Tuesday, isn't it?
All right, Ari Kane. Let's get into some fact or fiction. Let's start with Todd. Let's do it. Let's start with Todd.
Lebo, hopefully do better this time around because you can
Hopefully he
actually
doesn't.
see my face. Fact or fiction? Lebo, I think Jackson Merrill should have won Rookie of the Year over Skeens.
Oh, that's fiction.
Fiction.
I think it's a fact.
Fiction. I
Damn
went back
it.
and forth. I thought Jackson Merrill was incredible this year, but Skeens, I think, just crested enough.
Yeah.
I think it was like 23 starts. Anything, if it was 19 or
Plus,
less,
also-
I would have said Jackson. You got to that 20-some plus margin.
Jackson Merrill wouldn't have had, was it Dunn? At the,
Adam Dunn?
no.
Livy Dunn?
Livy Dunn with Skeens.
Okay.
Well, you don't know Jackson Merrill could be dating some
That's a good
smoke
point.
show. You don't even
Why
know.
do I care who Paul Skeens is dating?
You don't. Let's go. Dylan's next.
Fact or fiction? Do I care? No, I don't care. Fact, I don't care.
Okay.
Jason.
You care who Travis Kelce's dating?
I don't care. I don't
know
care
which
who he's
one- I don't
dating. I
know-
care about playing ball,
I don't know
dog.
which ones you care about or
Play-
don't. But
I don't care about T Swizzle. Play ball, dog.
when we go to break, you talk a lot about Travis and Taylor's relationship.
Never.
A lot. It's
Not
absurd.
once.
Dylan's up.
Dylan.
It's kind of scary.
The Bills will end up getting the 1 seed in the AFC. Fact or fiction?
I'm going to go fiction, but it's very hard to do that. And the only reason I'm doing it is because I'm a Chiefs fan.
Yeah, I'm gonna be in a homer here and say fiction.
You're a big Josh Allen fan. You are. I know
I
that.
am.
And Taylor Swift.
Big time. But I'm going to say this is
Haley
fiction.
Stunfield as well.
It is fiction. Yeah. Who's that? I heard that
She's
name
the
too.
gymnastics girl
Gymnastics
at
girl.
I don't
LSU.
know these things. I don't care.
that's cool. We
Yes,
all got a point
it's
there, right?
fiction. Yes, correct. Chiefs, I still think will get the 1 seed.
Okay. Great. Groovy.
Have to sweat it out,
Jason,
Yep.
the Sixers,
Uh-huh.
who are 2-11,
Fact. Todd.
will miss the playoffs.
Fact.
though. Oh, fact. They're toast.
Fact.
You don't believe in them at all.
Fiction, boys. They're gonna come back. Okay. Tyrese Maxey's
Yeah, this
injured.
is-
He's coming
let's-
back soon.
This smells like a coffee bet.
Joel Embiid
what about all the
is
players
gonna
that aren't
get
playing?
healthy.
Is that I mean you're actually in the playoffs or that little dumb playing thing?
They can play the dumb playing.
All right, I'm not betting that then.
Yeah.
Fine.
They're gonna find a way.
Todd leads us off here. It's 2-2-1. We're tied.
2-1.
Lebo. Indiana covers against Ohio State.
They're getting how many?
Like 13.5.
13.5.
12.5, I think.
Yeah, I think they're. I don't think they're going to win the game. I think they're going to fight hard. Probably lead at some point in this game, but they'll cover. So fact, they'll cover.
I'm going to go fiction.
I'm gonna go fact.
I'm going fact.
Yay.
And they're gonna play really well and not get to play in the Big Ten championship game, and then they'll
Not make the playoff.
maybe make the playoff.
That may should have been a better one. Does Indiana make the college football playoffs? I think yes, by the
Maybe
way.
next week, yes.
I
That
think
one,
yes.
after
If
they
they
lose
don't
to
win
Ohio
this
State.
game, see, Penn State's going to be ahead of them probably.
It kind of depends how you play in this game.
Yeah.
I mean, how many
Yeah.
Big Ten schools? You have Oregon.
There's 4 of them right now
Yeah.
that are sitting right there.
Indiana fans and people that are rooting for Indiana to keep it close are going to find out what Penn State fans have learned for years and years and years, where you have a really good season playing all the Minnesotas and Iowas and all that,
Tough deal against.
and then you
go
go
to
to
the shoe.
the horseshoe and get beat by 21.
Yeah. You might be
Google
right,
me.
Dylan, but I'm believing in Google me, Indiana. We'll go.
By the way,
to,
genius for signing an 8-year extension before
No
this game.
kidding, dude.
Before this game, yes.
Going to
million.
Dylan.
That tells you anyway it's going to go.
8 million. a
Dylan.
year.
Dylan. Mike Tyson versus Jake Paul was fixed.
I'm going to go fiction. I thought you were going to say the worst fight in history of boxing, which would have been fact, but no, fiction.
That would also probably been fiction.
Fact.
It's fixed in a way. I'm not sure to say who won or whatever, but yeah, it was absolutely fixed to go as long as it was and to go the way it went.
I'm gonna say fiction. No way. I'm kind of with Dylan, and
I've seen enough TikToks to know the whole thing.
I know,
with
right?
contracts
you
and
watch the
things.
TikToks
Yep.
that you're gonna believe the random dude on TikTok.
Yeah.
My thing is, Mike Tyson just looked like a 58-year-old man who could not stand. Like his legs
Unless they
looked like
sped up all
Jell-O,
the videos I saw in practice.
which is completely possible. Also,
Possible.
they didn't show Mike Tyson's legs.
They
which
know, but
Mike Tyson trying to
he
move.
never flurried for more than an eighth of a second.
I don't
in
think he
this game.
could. You see
Whole
the guy?
thing was fake. Fake.
I'm with
fake.
Todd.
There's a real fight the next night. that
There
know,
was.
pretty good.
Yeah, there was. And there was a real fight right before that.
Oh, yeah,
That
well,
was pretty
absolutely.
good.
Well.
So the one before and after, really good.
Right.
That one,
Not good.
What was that? What was
was
that?
good. That was buffering. Jesus, Sterling.
Yes.
Let's go. Read the room.
Oh.
It
Let's go.
buffered.
I'll go first. Here we go.
Oh.
Nope, you can't do it now. You were lost. I'll go first here.
Charles and Minahu will make a bigger impact than Pacheco. Charles and Minahu will make a big.
I will say that is going to be fiction.
Fact.
I'll go fact, too.
Fact.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is. They have problems getting after quarterback
Yes.
Jason.
They have. That's a good answer, Lebo. Good answer.
Now, we can't prove this one because how do you measure impact? But
DVOA. EPA.
is that how we're doing it?
With bias.
That's the
With bias, yeah. Good call,
SHI,
Dylan.
Sterling Holmes impact.
Sterling Holmes. There's needed to be a T at the end of it.
I want it to be a minute.
Sterling Holmes impact training.
No.
I want it to be a. I want it to be a minute.
What does that spell?
It's kind of weird when it's like, no, Nazi Johnson struggles because of that ACL. It took him a while to come back from it. Oh, Turk Wharton last year, he was still recovering from that ACL from the year before, and he didn't have his legs. Amenahu tore his ACL. He's going to be great. Amenahu's going to be back. It's going to be Amenahu again.
Can someone dream?
Yeah. We're
Oh,
dreaming.
that's why I said I want it to be Amenahu. I'm just saying I
We
think
all
it'll
want
be
the same
Pacheco.
thing.
We all want the same thing.
Dreamweaver.
And we want Todd to lead us
Gary
off here.
Wright. Let's
Gary
go.
Wright, baby.
Who's
nice
up? Me.
pull.
Todd's up. It's 4-4 to 2.
Lebo.
We're
Yes.
tied.
The Lions are now the best team in the NFL.
Fact. By a billion.
Yep.
Yep. Fact.
Yeah, that's a fact. I don't like saying it, but it's
They
true.
were before last week.
Yeah.
Honestly.
I agree.
The 49ers, Dylan, will still win the NFC West.
Fiction. But they will get a wild card spot.
I'm going to go fiction as well.
Fiction. Kyler.
Yeah, I think it's fiction. Wow.
Yeah, you like Kyler, so.
Who I called the Texans last year, called Arizona this year
Wow. How about
on
that?
a heater
Oh,
with
yeah,
the
that's right.
upsets.
That's the only predictions you made were those two teams. So
Marvin
you got them
Harris
all
is good.
I'll go this time. It's 6-4. We're tied.
I get why the Giants are going with Tommy DeVito instead of Drew Lock.
Yeah, because they're tanking. So I'll say fact. You get that.
I don't think you get it. It's fiction. You don't understand it at all.
Yeah, fiction. Don't
I
understand
don't. I don't get it. You're not going to win with Drew Lock either.
Right, but no,
You're-
it's that's,
Play my guy.
that can't be right. You can't say that they're clearly tanking and then say I don't get.
Oh,
why
we
they're
just
doing it.
did. We're still tied, though. Don't worry about it.
7-4.
And I got a good,
great.
good bonus.
I'll
Today.
bet you. That's fiction.
Is it better than
Fact.
Is it better than you saying they're clearly tanking? I don't get why they're doing it.
Yeah, you're not going to win with Drew Lock. At least it's going to be fun. At least let me enjoy something.
I know for sure. Todd is leading us off on this one. 7-4. Tied.
Lebo, who has 4?
I do.
Yeah,
got a
you're
rough
not
day
good
today.
at this game. Yeah.
Oh, I'm fine. I'm fine.
Tied. It's tied.
There's 3 left. And I can come back and tie it up.
The Chiefs will bring in a veteran left tackle.
It's getting so far down the road. I think it's fiction. I don't think they're doing anything.
Yep. Fiction.
I'm going to stay with fact.
I think it's fiction now at this point too.
Wrong. 8-4. We are tied.
I think if it was going to happen,
This is as bad as I was last week.
I think it would have happened. At least you had the excuse.
It's almost
couldn't
like
see
you're
it.
not looking at him.
I refuse to look at
I
him.
won't look at him.
I refuse. Dylan's next up.
Dylan, I am concerned with Kelsey playing that much and only having 2 catches.
Fiction.
Fiction.
He was having concerns early in the year, and now he was killing it, and now he just had a
Fiction.
little slump.
It's fiction.
Yeah, it's fiction. I'm
Okay.
not worried about it.
You're not worried about anything.
I was really
I'm
gonna.
pretty laid
I was
back.
really gonna push back if that was.
Well, because
Last one.
I'm always correct. Because we don't
Really?
go back and actually look
I
at
was gonna
these,
say,
so it
yeah.
doesn't matter.
I'm going to do that next week.
Don't do it.
we say that every week, but that's fine. 9-5, still tied somehow.
All right. Finally, Jason.
Yeah.
I am more disappointed in K-State than I am with either Mizzou or KU, and I am speaking college football.
Hell no. You are way more disappointed in Mizzou than anything else. So
I agree.
Yeah.
And probably even more than Kansas, how they played.
Yeah. It's Mizzou.
What'd they say?
I said I am more
fiction.
disappointed in
Oh, yeah,
K-State.
fiction.
Fiction.
Yeah.
It's a fact.
Really?
I'm more disappointed in K-State.
I'll take your word for it.
I think K-State really had their best opportunity to make it to the college football playoffs. I really believed in them this year. Mizzou, obviously, yes, but after I saw the A&M and Bama performance,
You're so mad you just got married that day.
I got so I'm so happy.
I got so mad I figured, what the hell? What could be worse? I mean, I guess I can get married now. Nothing could be worse than Missouri losing to A&M like this. All right, it's tied at 9-5.
Tied up.
All right, we got the tiebreaker. What is the tiebreaker, Sterling?
I will not be here next week.
That's the tiebreaker. Fact, yes. I'm going to go,
So,
that's a 10 out of 10?
I'm doing a Thanksgiving one,
Okay.
y'all.
Okay, we're giving thanks.
What are the top 5 Thanksgiving dishes?
Top
To see
5.
that's the way you do it, Corey.
Good job.
Much better.
More so next.
Nine 5.
9 to 5, all tied up here in Fact or Fiction.
That was as bad as you've ever done.
That's
like the way Corey
rough.
used to treat you.
It's Corey used to change it no matter what it was. What'd you say, Jason? Okay, then I'm going to go fiction.
Who said I didn't do that?
That's you know what you're not wrong. KU pregame right here on Sports Radio 810 WHB starts at 5:30 this afternoon, and then North Carolina Wilmington at 7:00 versus the Kansas Jayhawks. All right, so the tiebreaker was the top 5 Thanksgiving dishes for Sterling, right?
Let's all name one.
No, these are the legit ones.
Oh,
it's undisputed.
I put breast of turkey
at number 1.
I just did as one of my 5.
Is everyone giving an answer right now?
Yeah. Let's just go 1 through 5. My number 1 is sweet potato casserole.
Ding.
I had sweet potatoes. Fourth though, but I had green bean casserole first.
Get that off there.
Okay,
Thank you.
Get that off there. Sweet potato casserole.
You got anything,
Is
Dylan?
that number 1 for you?
It's not really.
His number 1 is stuffing.
Stuffing's number 5. That's on there.
Okay.
Stuffing's on there for me.
So
Stuffing,
you have
you have it. Okay. So stuffing's on there. Stuffing is number 5.
Mashed potatoes.
Number 1.
All right, I got
Sweet
3.
potato casserole is number 2.
There we go. I'm 3 for 3. I
you
got
got
pumpkin.
pecan pie.
I got that honey glazed ham with the crust on it, not the
See,
turkey.
that's just left off.
Okay,
that's just
fine.
left off.
What about the pumpkin pie?
So pumpkin/key lime pie is number 4.
All right, so I got 4
no
out of 5.
pecan pie.
No, key lime or pumpkin. And then
Cranberries?
number 3 is turkey with cranberry sauce.
Okay.
Because you got to have the cranberry sauce with the turkey, or else it's kind of. Let's be real. No matter how good a turkey, there's going to be slightly.
I think you
dry.
won, Jason.
He
I
got
think Jason
3.
got all
He
5.
got 3.
He had mac and cheese. No, he didn't have mac
I got
and cheese.
4 of 5 because I put the ham instead of the turkey.
Nobody
Ham
went
and turkey,
stuffing.
yeah.
Dylan put turkey number 2
Yeah, but I put breast.
of turkey.
So mine went 5 mashed taters, then 4 mac and cheese casserole, 3 ham, 2 turkey, 1
I
stuffing.
think Jason won.
I think
Yeah.
I did. Yep, came
Jason
all the way
had a good
back
one.
from. Luckily, we were tied 9 to 5 for me to be in the tiebreaker.
I'm gonna go ahead and make a ruling.
Yep.
Dylan won.
Okay, great. Nice job, Dylan. Well done, Dylan. Well done, sir. At least Sterling, you're smart enough in your top 2 to have the sweet potato casserole.
Oh, it's incredible.
With
It's
that
the
brown
goat.
sugar
Yes.
crust.
Oh, yeah.
my.
Marshmallows on top of it.
I prefer no
I
marshmallows.
don't need the
personally.
marshmallows.
Yes, Jason. You know
I
what,
don't need the
Jason?
marshmallows.
You might have won with that
Yeah.
comment. Yeah. That was
Yeah,
big.
take that, Dylan, in your face, punk. Yeah.
No,
Happy
after
Thanksgiving.
after that outburst, I'm going back to Dylan.
Darn it. I had the win right
You
there.
gotta learn. You
Settle
gotta learn.
down.
50
Threw a
yards.
flag on you.
It's a
Cincinnati and
flag.
the Chargers going back and forth.
Flag.
You take the win.